Is Ocean Robbins, and I am so excited that in 12 minutes we are going to begin the 2020 Food Revolution Summit. You're one of more than 300,000 people who are joining in this summit and who are taking a stand for healthy, ethical, sustainable food for all. We'll start in about 12 minutes, but right now thousands of people are already gathering. So I want to take this moment to welcome you and to let you know that if you care about food, if you care about health, or if you want to prevent illness and to thrive in life, you're in the right place. If you want to make the healthiest possible choices that you can, even in the midst of all the challenges going on in the world right now, you're in the right place. If you want a healthy body, if you want a healthy world, you're in the right place. If you're interested in a smarter immune system, if you're interested in better sleep, higher energy levels, healthier skin, better digestion, or in preventing Alzheimer's, cancer, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, or any of the other major chronic health challenges of our times, you are in the right place. If you want to optimize your health and if you want to create the conditions for you and your family to survive this time of pandemic and to emerge stronger and healthier on the other side, you're in the right place. We'll be officially starting the Food Revolution Summit in about 11 minutes, and right now I am Ocean Robbins and I am welcoming you here. My dad and colleague John Robbins and I are often called the founders of the Food Revolution Network. But the truth is, I think of it that we are more accurately described as the foundees because we were found and we were founded by this work. And in this summit, I hope that it finds you too. I hope that it finds you. I hope that it comforts you. I hope it heartens and inspires you. And I hope it supports you in making food and life choices that are in alignment with your values, that support your health and wellness, that help you to thrive. If you just joined us, we'll be starting the Food Revolution Summit in a little less than 10 minutes now. We will lead off with my dad and colleague, John Robbins, interviewing Dr. Matt McCarthy. And I am Ocean Robbins, CEO of Food Revolution Network and co-host of this Food Revolution Summit. And if you just joined us, I'm right now sharing a few welcoming words. You know, in the face of shutdowns and lockdowns and shuttered businesses, in the face of all the fear of overwhelmed hospitals, in the face of epidemic rates of obesity and type 2 diabetes and cancer, in the face of the climate crisis, and of course in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic and all that it brings, it can be easy to feel overwhelmed. Some of the problems we face can at times feel unsurmountable and even unconfrontable. And a lot of people sometimes find themselves wondering if there's any hope for a healthier and brighter future. And I am here to say, yes. We are here to say, yes. There is actually immense hope. And the way I think of it is that hope is not so much a noun as a verb. It's an action that we live from. And when it comes to food, when it comes to the food you eat and put inside your body, you very literally carry keys that can help to shape your destiny. In this summit, you're going to find out how you can leverage the incredible power of your food choices to support a healthier life and to support a healthier world. We'll begin the Food Revolution Summit in about 8 minutes with an incredible team of speakers. Today's topic is science, safety, health, and the global pandemic. In a few moments, you'll hear us on the line with Dr. Matt McCarthy on health and love in the time of COVID-19. At the top of the next hour, you'll hear from Dr. Michael Clapper, and an hour after that, you'll hear from Dr. Zach Bush. Each of these brilliant doctors you'll hear interviewed via audio conference by my dad and colleague, best-selling author John Robbins. And after each interview, if time allows, I'll be on live with you to bring you my top takeaways and reflections, to share in questions and answers, and to give away some bonus resources until the next interview starts. Now, before we begin with Dr. Matt McCarthy in just a few minutes, I want to say that right here and right now, you're part of a powerful convergence of people who care, who are committed to learning and making positive choices, who value healthy food, and who are part of your food revolution, So let's make this a supportive, non judgmental community and a safe space for each person to be exactly who and where they are and to support each person in learning and in growing. And remember, we're all in this food revolution journey together. No one person has all the right answers. We're all learning, we're all discovering. So let's bring an attitude of love and connection and respect and mutual support to the comments at the bottom of the broadcast page and to how we interact with each other throughout this journey. We'll be starting the Food Revolution Summit in about 7 minutes now, and I can hardly wait. Thousands of people have already gathered. And I want to invite you to go ahead and post an introduction of yourself in the comments thread on our broadcast page. You can say hello, share one thing you're hoping to get out of this summit, share what's on your mind or in your heart, share where you are in your food revolution journey. Go ahead and press the button to refresh the comments in order to see the latest ones that have been submitted. Fred Howard wrote, I am living proof that what you preach at FRN and what I now practice works. I died 10 years ago at age 68 from a severe coronary artery blockage. 100% left, 75% right. It's called a widowmaker. No warning. I simply passed out in a restaurant and should not have awoken. The Lord spared me, and I promised him while on the table for 4.5 hours. If he were not through with me, I would discover what caused my demise and learn how to get healthy and stay healthy to serve him. I now live in Colombia, South America, and I'm healthier than I've been in 40 years. There is no better way to guard against the coronavirus and thousands of other germs worldwide than to build strong immune systems through healthy diets, exercise, and rest. Natural wellness is a matter of choice and determination and has little to do with age. I have not seen a medical doctor in 10 years, and I take 0 pills or medication. I want to show the world how to get healthy and stay healthy naturally, so they too can accomplish their purpose in life. Well, Fred, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We are so grateful you are alive and you are here with us. And now I want to share with you a pre-summit message from activist and Academy Award-winning actor and longtime family friend Joaquin Phoenix. Joaquin is well known for his brilliant acting career, but what a lot of folks don't know is that he's also deeply committed to supporting a more peaceful, compassionate, and healthy world. It was because of his efforts that the most recent Golden Globes and the most recent Oscars both served plant-based menus. So without further ado, here is Joaquin's message to kick us off.
This is Joaquin Phoenix, and I'd like to welcome you to the Food Revolution Summit. You're about to participate in the most important conversation on the planet about our food. You have a right to know the truth about what you eat, where it comes from, and the impact it has on your health. The more you know, the more power you have to take action. Join John Robbins and Ocean Robbins as they interview some of the world's leading experts on healthy, safe, and sustainable food. This summit is imperative right now because our food chain is in crisis. Big agribusiness has made their profits more important than your health, more important than the environment and the basic dignity of animals, more important than your right to know how your food is produced. Let's face it, our current food system is a disaster, and it's getting worse unless we do something. You may already know there's a huge link between your food and your health. You may know that a majority of the medical costs bankrupting families could be eliminated with better nutrition. But do you know about the alternatives? Do you know what the experts have to say about staying healthy and how to build a healthier society? Do you know what they have to say about the food we put in our bodies every day? John Robbins and his son Ocean decided to capture the wisdom of top experts on food and diet and share it with you. We're all concerned about the future of our food. If you're like me, you want reliable, up-to-date information from a trustworthy source. John and Ocean created the summit as a way to help. Now is the time to find out how you and your family can get informed and take action. Your mind will be clearer, your heart more at peace, and your family will thank you for the rest of your life, and so will your body. I hope that what you discover here will help you and those you love be healthy and make a difference in the world. Invite your friends and join me in the Food Revolution Summit.
Thank you so much to Joaquin Phoenix for those wise words and for welcoming us all together. We will be starting the 2020 Food Revolution Summit in about 2 minutes now. As we go through this day, please post and share in the comments right on the broadcast page. You can share what you're learning, your aha moments, what you want to reflect on when you hear something particularly inspiring or moving from one of our speakers. Go ahead and post that so everyone else can reflect on it and digest in it with you as well. We're already hearing from a lot of wonderful people. Chris Kennedy said, "It's like Christmas. I am grateful for Ocean John and all the contributors to the Food Revolution Network. I've been joining for a few years now and know that my life is healthier because of the resources and education I have received." Just so many great things about this organization. I encourage you all to dig deep, own the series, and utilize the resources. It will change your life. Thank you, Ocean, sending you and your family peace and health during these tumultuous times. Thank you so much, Chris. We are so glad you are here. Randy Kaplan said, "Hi, I'm a registered dietitian, have been practicing for 30 years. Old boo-hoo, but feel and look younger than my age. I've been furloughed from work, yet I feel so grateful to have the time to watch the presentations. I also purchased them in case I am interrupted from watching to have the recordings for a later date. I admire and follow many of your speakers and have learned novel concepts from my personal along with my professional life. Every time I attend these conferences, I thank you for all you do and broadly passing the message that we are what we eat. There is no doubt about that." So true, Randy. There is no doubt about that. And I'm sorry that you've been furloughed from your work at a time when the world probably needs your dietitian support more than ever. But I am so grateful you're here with us. And I know you will put what you learn here to good use to serve many, many people. Thank you so much. We'll be starting the Food Revolution Summit in just a matter of moments now with an interview with Dr. Matt McCarthy. He's the author of Superbugs, The Race to Stop an Epidemic. I had the privilege of meeting Dr. McCarthy at a conference on Long Island, where he and I were speaking together just a few months ago. He spoke about infectious diseases, how a pandemic could spread, and about his decades of work to stop pandemics. He also talked about how our modern agriculture and lifestyle practices are making us more vulnerable to pandemics, and most importantly, what we can do about it. As COVID-19 was spreading, I knew Matt McCarthy was the perfect person to open this summit, and I'm so grateful he agreed. So now it looks like it's time for us to get started. We'll begin with Dr. Matt McCarthy in a moment. Welcome to the Food Revolution Summit, where we explore how you can heal your body and your world with food. This is Ocean Robbins, and I am joined by my dad and colleague, John Robbins, in welcoming our guest, Dr. Matt McCarthy. Matt McCarthy, MD, is the international best-selling author of Superbugs, The Race to Stop an Epidemic. He has a degree in molecular biophysics and biochemistry from Yale and a medical degree from Harvard. He's a staff physician and infectious disease specialist at one of New York City's largest hospitals, where he serves on the ethics committee. Dr. McCarthy serves as a pandemic advisor to members of Congress and to the United States military. He's been on the front lines of pandemic prevention and preparation for decades. Some years ago, Matt spent time in Africa studying the Ebola virus and bats. In 2015, he wrote an article for Slate.com in which he predicted that the next global pandemic would arise from a pathogen being transmitted to humans from an animal, and he pointed specifically to Chinese meat markets as a likely place for this transmission to happen. In 2019, many months before anyone had ever heard of the new coronavirus, he was interviewed by Medscape, a prominent resource for physicians and healthcare professionals. In that interview, Matt said that the next great pandemic was going to come from a pathogen that would come from a bat or rat to a human and then spread around the globe very quickly. I can't wait to hear what he is going to say now about where he sees us and where we go from here. So now, Matt, my dad and I are so grateful to you for your brilliant work and to have this time with you. And now for this interview, I'm going to hand it over to my dad and colleague, John Robbins.
Well, thank you, Ocean, for that introduction. And thank you, Matt, for being with us.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, I want to begin by offering my love and compassion to all the people who are suffering terribly from the outbreak of this coronavirus all over the world. There are people listening to us right now in at least 100 countries. My heart is with all who are sick. It's with all who have lost loved ones. And my heart is with all the doctors and nurses and other medical staff who are working so very hard under, in many cases, terribly difficult conditions to save lives. And my heart is also with all of those who are experiencing financial distress, whose lives are being brutalized by the economic dominoes that are falling on so many good people everywhere. And my hope, Matt, is that in our conversation today and in our entire Food Revolution Summit, which has now begun, we will inform and we will inspire people about what they can do to live with more health and more hope and more love in this time of so much crisis.
I was the first physician who was assigned to be the coronavirus attending physician at my hospital. And so when I dug into this world, it was really nerve wracking at first, right? We had never had a case before, and suddenly I was going to be the attending physician responsible for caring for these patients. And it went from one case to two cases to four cases to eight to 16. And before you know it, the whole hospital was filled with patients with a virus that we'd never seen before. And the remarkable thing here is that despite how nerve wracking and how, frankly, scary it could be, what I've seen day after day are people rising to the occasion and people showing leadership in positions that they previously didn't have an opportunity to be leaders. People who were somewhere lower on the chain of command have stepped up. And one of the things I tell the medical people that I work with and the people on my team is that everyone has an opportunity to be a leader here because this is so new to all of us. And just the way you carry yourself is an opportunity to show not only leadership, but also to convey hope to the healthcare workers around you, but also to these patients who are terrified. I will tell you that I am still filled with hope every single day because of the people around me who are stepping up to be leaders.
Well, I hear that, and I'm moved by that too. That so many people in your hospital are stepping up as leaders and meeting this completely, in some ways, unprecedented, because it is so novel, coronavirus, and helping people. But every day, we in the public we hear more about healthcare workers being infected and hospitalized and even dying. We hear about an unforgivable lack of personal protective equipment. We hear of doctors being rationed surgical masks that are stored in paper bags between shifts. We hear of nurses outfitted in garbage bags instead of protective gowns. And we hear of janitors made to clean hospital rooms without an N95 mask, even when patients have just died in that room from the coronavirus. So, Matt, I am, and I know many of our listeners are in awe at the bravery of you and all the other nurses and doctors and healthcare workers who are putting yourselves on the front lines day after day. But I doubt that I or we can even imagine the toll that it might be taking on some of the doctors and nurses and emergency workers and hospital personnel who have to work in these conditions with the lack of protective gear and the colleagues who maybe have already contracted the virus and the fear of infecting your own family even, or the constant anxiety and the presence of death. So, Matt, I have two questions about this. First, do doctors and nurses and other medical personnel working in hospitals across the country still have a serious shortage of masks and other personal protective equipment? And if so, what is it like to fight for the lives of patients under these conditions?
Well, I can only speak to my experience, but I certainly read the news as everyone else does. And the doctors that I all work with and the nurses that I work with have not had any issue with the protective equipment. But then I'll read an article about a hospital down the street where, as you mentioned, they're wearing garbage bags, and it breaks my heart. People went into the medicine to help people, and to see their lives threatened because they're just doing their job is something that I think weighs on all of us. Um, it seems like there is an uneven distribution of some of the very basic protective equipment, that some of the hospitals have more than enough and others are scrambling to get more. And it's very hard to talk about these things because it scares people. And we don't want people to be scared. We want people to have faith in the medical system. And what we're finding is that the situation gets a little bit better every day. I practice in Manhattan and I look at some of the outer boroughs to see what's going on. And just over the river, it seems like it's another planet. It seems like it's another country that, I've seen people talk about not having the equipment they need. And then in Manhattan, where we do have what we need. And then we can see that the mortality rates vary by borough, and the mortality rates vary by city. And I think it speaks to the inequality that we all are very familiar with in the United States, and that this pandemic is no exception. When the mortality rate varies by zip code, you've got a problem. And I think that there is going to be a reckoning when this is all over. And we're able to look back at the response to say what went right and what didn't go right. And I think that there is, I was talking about all the bravery and leadership. There's a lot that's gone right, but we're going to have, an autopsy on this entire process and find out that a lot went wrong. And I think that it begins with some of the protective equipment shortages, and then certainly the lack of testing. I think everyone knows someone who had symptoms who wasn't able to get it tested in a timely manner and may have spread the virus around. So these are very complicated issues that I think are going to take months or even years to fully understand. But I can tell you it is heartbreaking to see the discrepancy from one hospital to the next in terms of protective equipment.
It is heartbreaking, and it is heartbreaking that anyone's life or death should depend on their zip code, on their socioeconomic status, even on their race. But that's what we have, are these divisions in our society today. Some of us have hoped that this virus, which is in some ways an equal opportunity destroyer, it doesn't care how much money you have. It doesn't care what political party you affiliate with. It doesn't care what religion you are or aren't. Would kind of be a leveling, show us that we're all in this together, to use the cliche. But in fact, wealth matters, and the people in the wealthier, more affluent neighborhoods with access to the more affluent hospitals are doing better, and that's what I hear you saying.
Yeah, it's tough to see that, but I think that is going to be a consistent theme for a while until we have a vaccine and until we have effective therapeutics. And those things are coming, but they're just not available yet.
I want to talk for a moment about the origins of this illness. COVID-19 is far from the first infectious disease that's been transmitted to humanity from an animal. The domestication of chickens gave us chicken pox and shingles and various strains of the bird flu. Pigs were the source of influenza. Measles, smallpox, and tuberculosis emerged from cattle, and the AIDS virus was first transmitted, presumably, to a human who ate a chimpanzee who was infected with a simian form of the disease. Most of the new diseases that crop up around the globe each year are zoonotic, meaning they come from animals. They come from either domesticated animals or wildlife. SARS originated in bats, likely by way of the mongoose-like civet cat. And then the Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome, known as MERS, also came from bats and was passed to humans through camels. COVID-19 seems to have traveled from bats, perhaps through scaly anteaters called pangolins, to humans. Matt, can you tell us about your work studying bats and Ebola? And what is it about bats that make them such capable host reservoirs for these terrible viruses?
Yes, that's a great question. So I'll tell you, this all began for me during my first year of medical school at Harvard. And I had just finished another life being a professional baseball player. And I wanted to go full bore into medicine. And it was during my first year that I decided I wanted to be an infectious disease doctor. And during that first year, I realized I wanted to go travel somewhere and study an infectious disease. And I decided to take on a project looking at the Ebola virus. And the project that I had was a very simple one, which was this: Ebola virus would ravage a town or a village, it would kill 300 people, and then it would disappear for 20 years, and no one knew where it went. Where did this thing go? And the team that I joined had a theory that the virus lived in bats and that it could live, for some reason, bats could live with the virus and it wouldn't kill them. And so what I did was I learned how to catch bats. And I started going to Tufts Veterinary School outside of Boston, learned how to use a blow dart gun. I learned how to use tranquilizers. And I learned how to use this very fine netting that could trap bats. And so I went over to Cameroon, Western Africa, and I would follow these bats and I would watch them feed at night. And they would fly up over hills right as the sun was setting. And I would figure out their feeding process. And then I would bring my net up. It looked kind of like a volleyball net, except that the mesh in the netting was so fine that the bat's sonar couldn't pick it up. And these bats would fly into my net, and then I would pull them out, and I would stick a needle in under their rib cage and into their heart, and I would take blood out, and I would send that blood back to the United States to test it for Ebola. And it turned out that these bats did have Ebola virus, and for some reason it did not kill them. And the thought is that because bats are the only flying mammals, they have learned to cope with the stress of flying by turning down their immune system, by tamping it down. And this is a really innovative and smart thing to do, because when a human gets Ebola virus, our immune system goes into overdrive, and that overdrive can actually kill us. And it turned out that bats were living with all kinds of very dangerous viruses, things like rabies, things like SARS. And so my team started surveilling bats around the world. The next summer, I went to Malaysia to study a virus called Nipah virus that lived in bats. And we were able to predict very accurately that the next great pandemic was probably going to come from a bat. And we knew that it needed to have special features, one of which is that it was a respiratory virus, meaning that you cough or sneeze to transmit it to somebody. But we also knew that it couldn't be too deadly. The thing about Ebola is that it's so deadly, it almost burns itself out. It kills 300 in a village and then it disappears. But coronavirus hit this sweet spot where it was deadly, but it wasn't too deadly. So it allowed itself to spread around the globe very quickly. And that was something that we all knew was a matter of when and not if. The thing that my team has been saying is that the next pandemic was going to come from a place where you have humans and animals coming into contact in ways that they normally shouldn't or they normally wouldn't. And one of those places that I wrote about 5 years ago was these Chinese wet markets or meat markets, where there were all types of animals that really should not be for human consumption. And I think that we really have two options. One is to just stop these markets from existing. The other option is to say we've got to beef up the surveillance tremendously so that we're testing the blood samples from these animals constantly to make sure that they're safe to eat. One of those two things involves a lot of money and a lot of effort, and that would be the surveillance. You know, the much simpler thing would be to say these markets are simply too risky and we've got to shut them down.
Well, that would be the simpler solution or response. I'm thinking about another source of contamination and infection, or at least potentially coming into the human body, is from bacteria that have become resistant to antibiotics. Antimicrobial resistance is increasingly common. Worldwide, they estimate over 700,000 people per year are now dying from diseases that are caused by bacteria that have become resistant to our drugs. Matt, can you talk to us a little bit about the relationship between the factory farming of animals for industrial meat and dairy production, the use of antibiotics in those factory farms, antibiotic resistance, and infectious disease in humans?
Yeah, so that's quite a question. And I'll tell you that before coronavirus hit, this was the focus of my career. And this was the focus of my writing. You know, the book I wrote, Superbugs, is all about antibiotic resistant bacteria. The reason that we have this crisis of drug resistant bacteria is that we have misused the antibiotics that we have. The first antibiotic commercially available was penicillin in the mid 1940s. And there were all of these antibiotics that came about in the 1950s, and we overused them. And when I say overuse them, one of the key places for that is in commercial agriculture and in meat producing animals. And what's happened is that people recognize that the people who raise these animals is that if you give them antibiotics, it not only could prevent certain types of infections, but the meat on the bones were actually more plump, that it was producing more meat. And so that led people around the country to just pump these animals full of antibiotics. And while you did get a little bit more meat on the bone, you were also allowing the bacteria that were in these animals to become highly resistant. And the way that happens is that when a bacterium is exposed to an antibiotic, a certain percentage of those bacteria are just going to die because the antibiotic works. But a subset are actually going to survive, and they're going to mutate, and they're going to create new enzymes and new machinery to destroy the antibiotics. And it's this sort of give and take, or a subtle war that's happening where the antibiotics and the bacteria are fighting each other. And sometimes the bacteria win out. And when they do, they can leap to humans and cause these very gnarly infections. And the challenge we have is that we are increasingly finding it harder and harder to treat these drug resistant bacteria. And one of the key drivers for that is the misuse of antibiotics in these meat producing animals.
Well, 80% of all the antibiotics that are produced in the United States today are actually used not to treat human beings with bacterial infections, which would be their proper use, but they're used as growth promotants, as you described, in industrial meat production in factory farms. And Matt, if we keep doing this, if we keep using the vast majority of our antibiotics not to heal people, but to keep animals alive and producing in the filthy and miserable conditions of industrial meat production, I wonder what that's going to portend for us. I mean, will the human future involve a return to something like the pre-antibiotic era, in which people died in droves from infections that we've now become used to effectively treating since the discovery of penicillin and other antibiotics?
I'm so glad that you're bringing this issue up because it's one that seems like people don't really think about until it hits home for them. And I'll tell you, for me, it was that my wife read a book about the way that animals are treated in these meat producing markets or farms. And so she stopped cooking meat in our house. And I started switching to a more plant based diet. And one of the things I did was I switched my lunch to just a enormous salad. And I found that I had so much more energy doing that. And it was something I never anticipated. But I wish that there was a way to have everyone in this country feel, or around the world, feel that sort of spike in energy or that rejuvenation from switching to a more plant based diet. And I'll tell you, when I'm in the hospital, people ask me where I get my energy from. And I tell them, just switch to a salad because you're doing the animals a favor and you're also doing yourself a favor.
Well, it's interesting that you should say that because in this Food Revolution Summit for the next 9 days, we're going to be looking at how we can make food the foundation of our health and how we can use food to prevent and even reverse chronic illness. And it seems to me, Matt, that in this time of COVID-19, this has become even more important than ever. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I have been pushed harder than I've ever worked in my career because I am trying every waking moment to not only take care of patients, but also to keep up with the literature and the data. There's so much information coming out that I've got to be at my best and I've got to be at peak performance. And one of the things I have found is that a plant based diet has given me that extra bit of energy that I need. I think that the coronavirus pandemic has left so many of us feeling helpless. I know people who are losing their jobs. I think we all know people who are losing their jobs, who are losing their companies that they've built. So many things feel like they're out of our hands. But there's one thing that we really do have some agency in, or that we have power over, and that's the food that we choose to put into our bodies. And so while this pandemic is, I think, so challenging on so many levels, it also provides some clarity and some purpose to say there are areas of my life where I can control things and that I can put myself in the best position to succeed. And one of those is making smart food choices and putting things into your body that are going to be helpful. And as I've said, I'm not somebody who naturally wants to eat healthy food, but I have no choice at this point. I've got to put myself in a position to succeed. And I think that that's really where the pandemic is going to leave, hopefully, if there's any silver lining here, it's that some percentage of the people who are affected by it realize that this is something they can control and that they can do right to improve their life. And so I think it's wonderful what the summit is doing to draw attention to the ways that we can optimize our health through nutrition. And so it's really been that plant based diet that's been helping me a lot.
Well, I'm glad you're getting results and support from your diet now. Last month, the CDC published a report that said that 94% of all the people who have died from this coronavirus in the US so far had an underlying chronic condition. And they mentioned specifically diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, chronic lung disease, or obesity. Data from Italy indicate that nearly 99% of the deaths in that country have happened to people who had one or more of these pre-existing conditions. Now, we have overwhelming evidence from a vast number of studies that people who eat a whole foods, plant-strong diet with lots of vegetables and fruits and little sugar or processed foods, and who practice a few other healthy lifestyle measures such as exercising and not smoking, are far less likely to have the very conditions that are now such serious risk factors for bad outcomes with COVID-19. So, Matt, I know there are no guarantees, and this is a new virus with features and characteristics yet to be understood. But if our people were healthier, if we weren't compromising our immune systems with poor dietary choices, if more people were eating whole foods, plant-based diets, we know we would have fewer people with the underlying conditions that are such serious risk factors now for the coronavirus. Matt, would we also have fewer fatalities, and would we also help doctors and nurses by not further burdening a healthcare system that is already stretched thin?
Well, it's a great point that you're making. I think that there's exceptions to every rule with coronavirus, and occasionally I see young, healthy people who end up very, very sick from coronavirus. But you're absolutely right. There was a study that just came out from a hospital down the street from me that said, yes, chronic conditions are associated with bad outcomes with coronavirus, but the specific chronic condition that's most associated with a bad outcome is obesity. And anything you can do to lower your weight and to improve your cardiovascular health is going to put you in a better position. And I'll tell you, when I switched to a plant based lunch, I lost 10 pounds. It's something that you can do to put yourself in the best position possible. As you said, there are no guarantees, but we have seen time and time again that people who are overweight are at higher risk. Weight is definitely associated with adverse outcomes, and anything you can do to put yourself in the best position, I think, is really important right now, and that certainly will begin with diet.
And it often begins with eating a lot of fresh vegetables and fruits, fresh produce, and less processed food, less fast food, less packaged foods. Matt, what can you say to those people who want to eat a lot of fresh vegetables and fruits, but who are worried today that they might be bringing the virus home on their produce, might be contaminating their kitchen and spreading the virus if they aren't exceedingly careful? Are there specific steps that we should be taking to make sure that doesn't occur?
Well, a lot of confusion about this right now. There's all kinds of studies coming out about where the virus can live, whether it's transmissible, is it in the air, is it on your shoes, is it on produce? I think the safest thing to do, and what we do in our house, is when we bring produce home, we just wash it off. We take that issue off the table, and We just give everything a scrubbing just to err on the side of caution. The data is frankly inconclusive at this point, but it's enough of a concern that we are taking that step just to be on the safe side. Something like a banana, for example, I am not scrubbing off. But if there's a different type of fruit, let's say that's grapes or strawberries or blueberries, we are making a point to really wash that thoroughly before we eat it. And I think that the same is true for salads and lettuce. We just don't know the answer to your question, frankly. And so sometimes that's going to lead to people taking an abundance of caution. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Well, when you say you wash off your salads, for example, do you just put them in a salad spinner with water?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So you don't use baking soda
That's
or
correct.
hydrogen peroxide or any other specific disinfectant?
That's correct. That's correct. And I think that there are people who do, and I don't fault them for that. This is really an area that we're learning more and more about. And it could be that 3 months from now, I'm saying, boy, I wish I had been using baking soda. But as of right now, I'm not.
Okay. Another question related to that. Is it necessary? Is it even advisable to disinfect packages and groceries before bringing them into the house?
We don't have any solid evidence on this. In my household, we are not disinfecting packages. We usually just open the box at the front door and bring the thing inside. But this is something that I read a different publication seemingly every other week with guidance on this stuff. And so I don't know the right answer to the question about the boxes, but for packages, we're opening it and bringing it inside and leaving the box outside and taking that to the recycling or the trash.
Well, we're learning more all the time, there's a lot to learn about this virus. I want to ask you about tests. We we there's so much to say. I know blood tests for the coronavirus could play a key role in deciding whether millions of Americans can safely return to work and to school. Um, but right now, public health authorities are warning us that we are entering a kind of wild west of unregulated tests and that this is creating confusion that could ultimately slow the path to recovery. There are more than 70 companies now that have signed on to sell so-called antibody tests, and the FDA has decided to waive initial review of these tests as part of its emergency response to the pandemic. The hope is that these rapid tests, which use a finger prick of blood on a test strip, could soon ease public restrictions, and we could do that by identifying people who have previously had the virus and have developed some immunity to it. But with almost no oversight of the tests, we have a lot of companies marketing a lot of them, and it's hard to know how good or how useful any of them might be. There are legitimate companies, and there are also fraudulent operators selling test kits, and distinguishing who's who can be quite a challenge. Even some hospitals have been incorrect and have assumed that the tests have been vetted when they had not. Matt, there are several different types of antibody tests. Can you describe the differences between them and give us some guidance here?
Yes, absolutely. There is a lot of confusion. I'll simplify one aspect of it. You mentioned that 70 companies are creating these types of antibody blood tests. Only one thus far has gotten FDA approval, and that's a company called Cellex, which is spelled Cellex, based out of North Carolina. And what these tests do is they, rather than hunting for the virus, they look at the blood response, your antibody response in your blood. So we know that the initial test that was created for the coronavirus was one where you stick a swab in someone's nose and you look to see if the virus is there. But sometimes that misses the virus. So now a better approach, we think, is to say, let's check somebody's blood to see if there is an antibody response, which indicates that the body was exposed to the virus and it tried to fight off the virus. And so there are different types of antibodies that are made. So within the first 4 days of being exposed to a virus, the antibody you make is called IgM. And then a few weeks later, you make something called IgG. And then the third type of antibody is called IgA. And so the way that these 70 companies and the tests that they're making differ is that some just test for IgG, some do IgM and IgG, and some do all three. What these tell you is not, it only tells you if you've been exposed to the virus. It doesn't tell you if you're infectious. It doesn't tell you if you're immune and can't get the virus again. It's simply a yes, no, have you at some point had the coronavirus? This will be very useful because we know so many people are asymptomatic. If we could test every person in the country tomorrow with this antibody test, it would give us a wealth of information about how deadly the virus actually is. You know, we look at a place like Italy where the death the percentage is like 10%, where there's a 1 in 10 chance that if you get the virus you're going to die. But we actually think that that's not even close to the real number. We actually think the number is closer to 0.2% or 0.4% mortality rate. But to get to that number, we have to show that thousands or hundreds of thousands of people have actually been infected and are simply just showing no symptoms. So this blood test will give us a lot more information about the prevalence of the virus in the society, even if people don't have symptoms. And that's going to be very useful as we try to reopen the economy, get people back to work. We want to know much more about who's been exposed and how deadly this thing really is.
Well, if it's the case that a great deal more people have been infected than we realize, and if it's the case that many of them have experienced little or no symptoms, then I want to ask you about something. Could the threshold for the number of people with serious illness that's required for herd immunity to develop actually be lower than we might have imagined? I mean, would it mean that the peak could come sooner than we thought and the potential ultimate death count might be less than we've been projecting? I mean, how
Yes.
much credibility does that have to you?
These are all moving targets. And one of the challenges with modeling any of this stuff is that the models are only as good as the data that you put into it. And we know that the data we have so far is incomplete because we're not testing everyone. We're only testing people with symptoms, or we're only testing people who are able to find a doctor who can get them a test. So this is something where, you're seeing wild fluctuations in these predictions. It's because we don't have good information that we're feeding into the computers to try to project these things or to model these things. These models are going to get better and better as we do more and more testing.
Well, that's good news.
Yes.
There are some very prominent public officials today saying that nobody could have ever seen something like this coming. They are repeating that the pandemic is a completely unexpected problem that nobody could have prepared for. It seems to me that this pandemic was not only foreseeable, it was actually predicted. Matt, what's the truth? Is this global pandemic something nobody could have seen coming?
Well, we knew that it was coming. I mean, if you check my Twitter feed in October, I said that the next pandemic is going to come from a virus that leaps from animal to man, and that we should not shut down the surveillance of bats in China. So I could not have told you that it was going to happen in December of 2019, or that 2020 was going to be the year that it really spread around the globe. We did not know the year that this was coming, but we did have a very strong handle on where it was going to come from, and that it was going to be something that was really deadly. The challenge is when someone like me says, there's going to be this virus coming, nobody really wants to invest in all of the stuff that it entails to properly prepare. To tell a government, regardless of your political persuasion, but to get the political will to start making ventilators or to start making protective equipment for a virus that doesn't yet exist or that hasn't reached humans yet is a really hard thing to do. And I'll tell you, I don't have a lot of anger in my heart or a lot of frustration that we weren't better prepared. That's just not the way my mind operates. Even though, for the last 5 years, I've been saying this thing is coming and we need to prepare. I understand human nature and I know why we weren't quite ready. One of the frustrations I have, though, is that our testing was so far behind other countries. I've seen that, a great comparison is that the United States and South Korea detected their first cases on the same day, on January 20th. And if you look at what happened in South Korea and compare it to the United States, they were able to get their pandemic under control much more quickly because they had widespread testing. And what happened in our country is that the CDC made a test and they sent it out, and it turned out to be a faulty test. And it took a while for the right type of test to be made. And we needed that information. We needed the testing to be able to identify people who had the infection and then isolate them. And that was a setback that, as I have written about, that testing failure is going to be something that many, many books are written about in the future.
Yes, and hopefully we can correct the difficulties and problems that led to this kind of debacle that we have. It's cost a lot of lives. Some people today are thinking that it might be better if they just contracted the virus and got it over with. Matt, you've seen this virus now in many, many people. What do you want to say to those people who think that choosing to get intentionally infected might be a good idea right now?
Yeah, I've treated many cases of coronavirus, and I will tell you it is not a good idea to get intentionally infected for many reasons. One of which is that we don't have a good handle on who is going to end up critically ill from this virus and who is not. And the other thing is that you can easily spread it to hundreds, if not thousands, of people without knowing it. And you can remain infectious for weeks. And so the idea of willfully getting this virus is not something that I or any medical professional would recommend. And it just takes looking into the eyes of somebody who's dying from this virus to feel that way. And I can tell you, it is a very dangerous infection and one that we should not take lightly. So I would love to use this platform to say, take this seriously because it really can be a dangerous pathogen.
And the world is desperately now looking for a treatment for a disease that's already claimed more than 100,000 lives across the globe. President Trump has repeatedly touted the anti-malarial medications, hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine, as providing that much-needed solution. But even before Trump started talking about these drugs, studies abroad had sparked interest in them as a potential cure, and news about the drugs spread quickly online, percolating to the media and over to the White House. Matt, what's the truth? What's the real story with chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine?
Yeah, so chloroquine's not widely available in the United States. So I'll speak to hydroxychloroquine, which is known as Plaquenil, and it's a malaria drug, but it's actually more commonly in the United States a lupus drug, and I've prescribed it to hundreds, if not thousands, of people for lupus. What happened was a few months ago, there was a French study that came out that said that hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin showed a decrease in the amount of coronavirus in patients who took it, and that sounded like a great thing. The problem is that it was only 20 patients, and a decrease in the amount of virus doesn't actually tell you that much about if the patients are getting better, because we know that the immune system can absorb some of the virus, and in some patients it just goes down without any treatment. So what a lot of hospitals did was they reviewed all of the top level data available to figure out what are we going to offer patients. And we immediately, and most of the top hospitals, rejected the hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin combination that we've heard touted. But we did think that hydroxychloroquine alone might have some benefit based strictly on test tube studies. Now, nobody likes to use just test tube studies, but the truth is the coronavirus was so new that we didn't have any human studies to know if hydroxychloroquine worked. So many doctors started giving that drug alone to see if it would help. And I think that the data are mixed at best. No one considers hydroxychloroquine a magic bullet or a game-changing treatment. That's not ever going to be the case. It's possible that it offered a little bit of help, but the truth is it would be very marginal, and we're waiting to see the results of some published studies, which should be coming out very soon, to tell us if hydroxychloroquine helped at all. And I'll say that there are a lot of drugs that are being studied right now. Another one is something called remdesivir, that we just got the first published data that showed that it did help some people. It wasn't a randomized study, but it looked like there was a trend towards helping some very sick patients. And over the next few weeks, what we're going to see are more and more of these studies published. And many of us believe that the key to reopening society is going to be having a vaccine, which is 18 to 24 months away, but also effective drugs to give people in case they do catch this virus. And as of right now, we don't have an effective drug that we definitely can feel confident it will work. That hopefully will change over the next few weeks.
Are there other antivirals or other repurposed existing meds that might be used to prevent either the onset of COVID-19 or to prevent moderately ill patients from becoming critically ill?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things that people may not appreciate is that it's very hard to discover a new drug and then prove that it's safe to give to humans and then prove that it's effective for the virus or whatever you're treating. And because coronavirus is brand new, we don't know what is the best thing to use. And so, we're trying to repurpose a lot of drugs that we already know are safe to give to humans to see if they might have some effect in treating coronavirus. And one of the first things we tried was an HIV combination drug called Kaletra, which is two drugs in one called ritonavir and lopinavir. And there was some hope that it may work, and it turned out it did not. So no one is using the HIV combination anymore. There was also a drug that was developed in Japan for influenza that they're now repurposing. And there are other drugs that were created for Ebola that they're repurposing. So a lot of work is being done right now to figure out if these drugs that we know are safe could actually also be effective. And again, we'll know more about that in the next few weeks.
Have you had or have you heard of anyone who has had results using zinc in treating COVID-19 patients?
Tell you from my personal experience, I haven't seen anything that's overwhelming suggesting that we must give zinc. But that could change as well as more data is accumulated. But I would say that the general trend is very inconsistent around the country with zinc. But some people do think it helps.
You know, I've wondered if we might at some point start harvesting immune antibodies from people who've recovered from the illness and perhaps administering them to people battling the disease. Matt, do you think it's possible that coronavirus patients could benefit from the blood of those who have recovered?
Absolutely, we have studies ongoing right now with that very process. So this is known as convalescent plasma. And so what you do is you take the blood from a survivor, you spin it down, and you bring out those antibodies, and you give them to somebody who has the infection. That's been used throughout history, and there are clinical trials ongoing at a number of sites that are trying to do this. The one of the ethical issues that has come up is that sometimes patients are very, very ill, on the verge of death, and their families try to get them the convalescent plasma. And the researchers say no, because they don't want to give a potential treatment to a patient who's about to die, because you might think that the treatment failed, when in reality it was the patient's body that failed or that died. And so one of the emerging ethical issues is inclusion criteria for these clinical trials, where doctors want to make sure that they're testing the appropriate patients so that the results they get are generalizable for the entire world, and not something that is confounded by including the very, very sick. But I can tell you, if it's my family member, I'm going to be advocating for them to get any potential treatment that could help them. And we see that this ethical issue is becoming more and more pressing with every day.
There are so many ethical issues today. This is an unknown reality that we're dealing with in many respects, even as we learn more every day. Now, there are some public health authorities saying that this virus will basically be with us for the foreseeable future, but that it might mutate into an increasingly less virulent form, and that in 5 years, maybe, it might be experienced in a manner similar to the cold. Now, there are other coronaviruses that we know actually cause what we call the common cold. Matt, how likely do you think it is? I know you don't have a crystal ball, but your predictions have been remarkably accurate. So I will just like to ask what your thoughts are that over the next few years, the virus will mutate into something so much milder.
Well, the important thing to know here is that coronavirus is an RNA virus, which is different than DNA. RNA mutates very easily. So we know that this virus is going to mutate. And one of the principles we've seen is that when certain viruses are exposed to drugs, for example, HIV, if you start treating HIV with powerful drugs, it will mutate to become resistant to those drugs, but it becomes weaker in the process. And we say that there is this fitness cost, that the virus becomes essentially exhausted by trying to mutate around the drugs, and that it becomes weaker in the process. That is absolutely possible with coronavirus. If we start using remdesivir and hydroxychloroquine, whatever you want to throw it, and the virus starts mutating to evade these treatments, it could become weaker. And that would be a wonderful thing. We don't know what direction it's going to go. It's possible it could mutate to become more virulent, to become more aggressive. And this has implications for vaccine development, that we want to make sure that we create a vaccine that induces a very strong immune response that can create these broadly neutralizing antibodies. And so I will just say that I do anticipate that this virus will mutate, and it could be something that is beneficial or not. And we can't say with confidence which way it's going to go right now. I'm optimistic that it will follow other viruses and become weaker in the process.
You know, I raised that point because it sometimes seems to me that we are right now in the midst of two different pandemics. I mean, one obviously is COVID-19, and it's very serious. There's also, I think, a pandemic of fear. Matt, is there anything you can say to our listeners to help allay some of their fears?
Well, I'll tell you, I wake up every single morning around 3:45 or 4 a.m. and I go into the hospital to take care of patients with coronavirus. And fear is, I have many emotions, but fear is not one of them. The main emotion I have right now, or the feeling that I have, is one of focus. I am wholly focused on taking care of patients and figuring out how to be safe in the process and learning as much as I can about this virus. And I think that that's something that I hope other people can have a sense of purpose that in their lives, where they're focused on the good things in their lives, or they're focused on eating a plant-based diet, or focused on exercise, or focused on connecting with whoever they can. And that fear is just a wasted emotion here. If you are taking the proper precautions, it's just not the way to live your life, because you're going to miss out on so many wonderful things that are happening right now.
I hear that you're choosing really to be mobilized rather than paralyzed.
Yep, that's a great way of putting it.
Is there anything that you see happening that makes you smile or that gives you hope?
That's a great question. I'm actually a pretty happy-go-lucky guy, and I'll tell you that on rounds, but we can have light moments, and we can laugh about stuff. And it reminds me when I was a baseball player, and I'd be sitting in the dugout, and I knew that I'd have to go in, and I was a relief pitcher, and I knew that I was going to pitch the eighth inning. I couldn't sit in the dugout being nervous innings 1 through 8, because I would just tear myself in knots. So I figured out a way to just kind of think about other stuff, or to think about happy thoughts during the game, knowing that at some point the coach was going to point down to me and say, "It's your turn, buddy." And that's kind of how I live my life now, which is that when I'm when I'm on the mound, or if I'm in the hospital, I am wholly focused on getting the job done. But when I'm outside of that, I'm reading books, and I'm playing with my kids, and I'm trying to, live life and celebrate all of the wonderful things that are happening right now. It's been a long winter. I'm somebody who grew up in Florida, and I love the sun, and I love being outside. And, knowing that we're inching towards summer is something that fills me with hope. and fills me with, I think, a lot of excitement. And that is something that I try to convey to not only the doctors who I work with, but also the patients. And I spend a lot of time telling people that we're going to get you through this. We're going to be in this together, and we've got to be optimistic about the future. And that's really how I think we all should try to approach this, because it is uncharted territory for all of us.
Matt, I can't tell you how much I appreciate having this opportunity to talk with you and to bring your focus and your wisdom and your caring to our listeners. I want to thank you on behalf of Ocean and myself, and on behalf of everyone involved in the food revolution, and really on behalf of everyone who's trying to find love and peace and healing even in these troubled times. I thank you for your work, your compassionate and courageous work. I thank you for your insights, which have been brilliant, your clear voice, and of course for being with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is a wonderful opportunity to share what's really happening in the world. And this was really an honor for me. So thank you for having me.
We've been talking with Dr. Matt McCarthy, best-selling author of Superbugs: The Race to Stop an Epidemic. Matt, you're a pandemic expert. You're an advisor to Congress and the U.S. military. You're an emergency room physician on the front lines of this pandemic and the effort to stop it. You're also a very wise man and a source of heart and hope and clarity and consciousness to all of us. We are so grateful for your courageous, dedicated work, for your wisdom, and for your partnership in the food revolution.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to Dr. Matt McCarthy and to my dad and my colleague John Robbins for that fascinating conversation. To express your opinions on what you've been hearing and to find out what other people are saying, post and engage in the comments section on our broadcast page. Make sure to refresh those comments using the button that's provided there so you can see the most recent comments that have been submitted. Let's keep this conversation going and growing, and let's keep sharing with each other. What are you learning? What is heartening? What is inspiring? What questions are emerging? And respond to other people's comments. Share what you agree with. Share your ideas and resources and your own experiences. Let's build this powerful community together. Our next presentation will be an interview with Dr. Michael Clapper. It will start at the top of the hour in just a few minutes, followed by Dr. Zach Bush at the top of the next hour. We've received so many wonderful comments already this morning. Lynette Winterberger said, "Thank you for the facts and for interviewing Dr. McCarthy, who was one of the first physicians in the midst of the pandemic. I appreciate his expertise presented in layman's terms." Yes, Lynette, thank you. And I'm so grateful to Dr. McCarthy for his insights and wisdom and service. We heard from Lisa, who said, "I am absolutely loving this information. Thank you. Not only am I loving being exposed to this new information, but I'm also loving being exposed to people and new resources whom I've never heard of or come across. Awesome. Again, thank you." Well, Lisa, thank you for being here with us. We're so glad you're here. A bunch of people asked about high-dose intravenous vitamin C. We also had questions about zinc. So let me talk about that for a moment. In terms of vitamin C, first of all, if you don't get enough, you have big problems. So we clearly need enough vitamin C. But this is really about supplementation and IV use of megadoses, way more than you're going to get from, eating oranges or red peppers or guavas or other vitamin C rich foods. And so there is research currently underway in China right now. There are several studies being conducted that are seeking to find out if high doses of IV vitamin C can shorten COVID-19 recovery time. And so far, researchers have observed that it may reduce ICU stays and shorten time on ventilators. And in fact, based on initial preliminary research, the Shanghai Medical Association did endorse the use of high-dose vitamin C given intravenously as a treatment for hospitalized people with COVID-19. But they noted, and everybody who talks about this notes, that more study is necessary to know with confidence whether and how much vitamin C is actually beneficial. This is super early stage research. There are also some theories that oral supplemental vitamin C could be beneficial, particularly liposomal oral supplemental vitamin C, but they are theories, to be clear. We're kind of learning as we go here. And as far as zinc is concerned, research so far is intriguing, but it's also mixed. My best sense of it is that for people who are deficient in zinc, getting enough can be very, very helpful to immune function. But getting more than enough may not be helpful. So it's probably going to help some folks who are deficient, but not everybody. And so based on the research that I've done, I will say that I am personally choosing to take vitamin C and zinc and also vitamin D3 every day. And it's not because I know they will help, but it's because I think they might help. And I want to do all that I can. Of course, the most important thing that we can do is to eat fabulous whole foods, plant-centered diet. We're going to be learning a lot more about that in this summit because food really is the foundation of health, and supplements should at best supplement that. We heard from Layla Williams, who said, "I'm so excited to learn and apply this knowledge. I want to remain healthy, prevent disease, lose and maintain weight, and I thank you for your time, energy, and expertise." Well, Layla, stay tuned because I know you're going to learn a lot in this summit, and I'm so glad you're here. And it just got easier for you to learn and apply it all because you just won a totally complimentary empowerment package. Our team will follow up with you about it, and now you're going to be able to listen to and share the recordings of this summit anytime you like. You'll have the MP3 recordings, you'll have the transcripts, and more than $2,000 worth of bonuses. Congratulations, and I know you will put it to good use. And congratulations also to Bernard from New South Wales, Australia, Yvonne from Ontario, Canada, Litsi from Illinois, Ray from Guam, for getting the empowerment package. Welcome. We're so grateful for your support of our mission, and I hope that you put it to wonderful, wonderful use in your life. We heard from Donna, who said, "I'm overweight. I've had a very healthy immune system, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. You expressed strongly that obesity is a big risk factor for COVID-19. I'm wondering if this is true. Thanks for this broadcast." Well, Donna, yes, of course, everybody is unique, and I'm glad that you have a strong immune system. That probably helps a lot. At the same time, there's no question that statistically, excess weight is linked to higher mortality with COVID-19 and a lot of other health issues. Stay tuned, keep listening. You're going to learn a lot in this summit, including on day 4, when we focus directly on weight and the neuroscience of being lean and healthy. So now in a moment, it will be time for us to join with Dr. Michael Klaper for an interview on food, health, and the coronavirus. Here we go. Welcome to the Food Revolution Summit, where we explore how you can heal your body and your world with food. This is Ocean Robbins, and I am joined by my dad and colleague, John Robbins, in welcoming our guest, Dr. Michael Klaper. Michael Klaper, MD, has practiced preventative and nutritional medicine for more than 4 decades. He's served as director of the nonprofit Institute of Nutrition Education and Research, and is a member of the Nutrition Task Force for the American Medical Student Association. Dr. Klaper is the co-founder of Moving Medicine Forward, which is bringing nutrition education into medical schools. He's also the author of several books, a popular speaker, and one of the foremost experts in the world today on how you can make food into medicine that helps you thrive. So now, Michael, my dad and I are so grateful for your decades of brilliant work and to have this opportunity to share your insights in this summit. And now for the interview, I'm going to hand it over to my dad and colleague, John Robbins.
Well, thank you, Ocean, for that introduction. And thank you, Michael, for being with us again.
Absolutely. It's my honor. It's always a pleasure.
We're meeting at an auspicious moment in our world's history.
Indeed.
It's a challenging, somewhat weird time. Um, we know that the coronavirus pandemic is taking a far more deadly toll on those people who are suffering from obesity and diabetes and hypertension and cardiovascular disease and chronic lung problems and other chronic conditions. In Italy, 99% of the fatalities have occurred to people with pre-existing medical problems. And last month, the CDC published a report saying that 94% of all the people who have died from the virus in the US so far had an underlying chronic condition. Now, you and I have often talked about, and there will be a huge amount of discussion in this summit about how to take your health into your own hands and avoid obesity and diabetes and hypertension and cardiovascular disease and asthma and the other conditions that are now serious risk factors for bad outcomes with COVID-19. What I want to ask you, Michael, to start our conversation today is this. If America's population were healthier, if the prevailing diet was a whole foods, plant strong one, if people were eating beans instead of beef and lots of vegetables instead of processed junk foods, if we weren't compromising our immune systems with poor dietary choices, would the death toll from COVID-19 in America be far less than what we're now facing?
Oh, John, you really have put your finger on the crux of the issue here. Let's take a step back. In a normal, healthy body, one that's fueled essentially on plant-based foods, which are a clean burning fuel, we have, among our many wonderful systems and organs, we have this immune system. And it has several parts to it, but these amazing cells called lymphocytes are going around our circulatory system. And they're constantly taking the fingerprints of viruses that are riding through the bloodstream. There's viruses everywhere in our mouths, in our rectums, in our bloodstream. We're constantly facing a background of low-grade viremia, viruses in the bloodstream. And it's not a big deal. Our immune system recognizes these, whips up an antibody against that specific virus, and it's neutralized. And this is happening all the time. And if you've got a healthy immune system, that's basically going to be the experience with the COVID virus. You may get sick, no question, but young, healthy people, by and large, don't die. The mortality rates are folks with the quote feared pre-existing conditions, but we're talking about obesity and diabetes and congestive heart failure and asthma. These are the welcome mats that we can lay out for the virus if we're not taking care of ourselves.
Well, you said that if you're young and fit, well, a lot of us aren't, and we can't be young if we're not. We can become more fit if we aren't. But there's no doubt that COVID-19 is more dangerous for the elderly. But I hear you saying that a 70-year-old who's otherwise healthy and not frail might be more resilient in fighting off the infection than a 40-year-old who has diabetes or is obese or has hypertension. Is that accurate? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, absolutely. It comes down to the concept of biological age. The background state of health really is the main determinant of how well you're going to get through one of these infections. Every salad you eat, every bowl of vegetable soup, as those phytonutrients bathe your tissues, that's like putting gasoline additive in your car's tank there. Runs even better. Food as medicine literally is true here. So here's when the chickens come home to roost, so to speak, and taking care of ourselves really pays big dividends in times like this.
Well, a huge number of Americans have diabetes or have hypertension or are obese or have heart disease or have asthma or in some cases have multiple conditions. And I'm sure many of our listeners have some of these problems that make people more susceptible to the effects, to the dangers of COVID-19. Michael, if someone has one or more of these underlying conditions, which we know are such serious risk factors now, is it too late now for these folks to improve these conditions by eating more healthfully?
Boy, John, that is a spotlight on such an important issue here. I say in my lectures that I'm always amazed how quickly these diseases begin to reverse. You take an obese diabetic person with high blood pressure and get them going on the soups and salads and steamed veggies and lentil stews, etc. And within days, the obesity starts to melt away. The arteries relax. The high blood pressure comes down. The insulin receptors start to clear out, and the diabetes gets more manageable. This happens within just a few days. And so, circling back to the answer of your question, absolutely, it is never too late. I hope millions of people hear this, understand the message, and knowing that it's not too late, start to take that first step of, I'm going to get myself healthier. Man, tomorrow's going to be a healthier day than today. The body will respond beautifully in short order, and their chances of contracting a fatal virus really starts to go down. This is a perfect time to start improving your diet and improving your health.
Well, when we're talking about how quickly these conditions can start to reverse and actually be reversed, I'm thinking of a study, asthma patients. Obviously, asthma is a chronic lung problem, and it underlies some of the fatalities that we're seeing from COVID-19. But in this study, asthma patients who consumed a plant-rich diet that was rich particularly in fruits and vegetables for 8 weeks just only, experienced a substantial reduction in their use of inhalers, in their use of other asthma medications, and a sizable reduction in both the frequency and the severity of their symptoms. That's in just 8 weeks. And I'm thinking of another study where people who had reduced lung function were put on a diet that included more fruits and vegetables, and within 2 weeks, most of them were experiencing substantial improvement in lung function and a reduction in asthma symptoms with less wheezing and less need for medication. Michael, have you seen improvements in lung function in your clinical practice when people change their diets, when they stop consuming dairy products in particular? And if you have, is there an explanation for why that improvement might occur?
Oh, that's been one of the most exciting aspects. And it's one of the things that caught my attention early on as far as the power of food, in that with asthmatic lungs, the bronchial tube linings that carry on the air deep into the lung tissue, the inner linings are always in a state of low-grade inflammation, alert, and as a response, they put out extra mucus, and this mucus draws microbes that set off low-grade infection, and the infection keeps the vicious circle going. You get more inflammation, more mucus, and around it goes. And pretty soon the lung linings are swollen and congestive and full of mucus, and the patient is wheezing and in respiratory distress. And when I grew up as a physician, the prevailing thoughts among my pulmonary colleagues, they would dismiss the idea with contempt. Food, it doesn't matter what the patients eat. Never been any studies. Well, as you cited, there most certainly are studies that we have to remember basic physiology. The blood flow in the lungs is so great. You've got the pulmonary artery that's coming right out of the heart, forcing gallons of blood through the lungs every day. That one, to think that what we eat and minutes later is flowing through all the lung tissue doesn't have an effect. And second, when we rid the diet and the tissues of these irritating molecules, and casein and dairy products is probably one of them, how quickly things can improve due to that great blood flow. It washes a lot of these inflammatory molecules out of the tissues. And every one of us docs who practices a lifestyle kind of medicine and works with people's diets, we have folders, stables of people who used to have asthma, and it's a commonplace. I expect it to get better. It may not go away 100% in every person, but it invariably gets much, much better. And so circling back, food absolutely has a powerful effect to play here. And the dairy products, whether it's the casein, the beta-lactalbumin, there's lots of dairy-based proteins that seem to be particularly irritating to the lungs in asthmatically predisposed people. And so that's one of the first things I tell them to do. And as Dr. Lindahl and his studies and others have shown us, the lungs respond. And this is a pulmonary virus. And if your lungs are already loaded up with mucus and inflammatory cytokines, the last thing you need is this very aggressive virus that really damages lung tissue. So all the more reason to yank the dairy out, drink lots more fluids, do some breathing exercises every half hour, take 3 or 4 deep breaths, keep those lungs moving, and salad is medicine. And so have a big salad every day if you can. And yes, we can expect the asthmatic issues to improve as well, and that's going to improve the pulmonary health of the whole population.
Michael, as you say, COVID-19 is a pulmonary virus, and it can cause very severe cases of pneumonia, even fatal cases of pneumonia. Can you describe how the virus does what it does to us and how our immune systems ideally cope with it?
Right. This virus rides into the lungs through the bloodstream and through lymphatic flow rather than being inhaled directly into the lungs where it infects the tissue. That's why if you swallow the virus, if you rub your eye, how does it go from your eye to your lungs? Well, it gets absorbed into that network of blood capillaries in the front of our eye in the conjunctival membrane. And as I said, it rides along with lymphatic flow into the bloodstream and then into the lungs. And again, that massive blood flow in the lungs, it sprays out through the lungs like a snowstorm, and it will nest in those areas of the lungs where the blood flow slightly decreased, and that might be from an old infection or from diabetes, or people who just, again, not to beat up on people struggling with obesity, because it is a struggle. But if you've got a large abdomen full of abdominal belly fat, well, that pushes up from the abdomen up under your diaphragms, and it pushes your diaphragms up, and it collapses down the lower parts of the lung. And as obese people just sit all day mostly, they're just breathing off the top of their lung volume. And so a third or a half of their lungs, the alveoli are basically shut down. And again, mucus will accumulate and blood and lymphatic flow decreases, so less immune cells come in. And this is a recipe for the virus to spread really aggressively through the lungs. I've been impressed and distressed when I look at the CT scans of these people's lungs, how much of the lung tissue in a really aggressive case is really damaged or destroyed. These people are not going to have normal lungs. The folks with the most severe infections, after this passes, it's not just, I have a cold, now I'm back to normal again. A lot of these people are going to be respiratory cripples from the severe damage this has done to their lungs. So keep those lungs moving, really important, and especially if you've got it. If you've got the condition, do not just sit in a chair breathing quietly all day. At least every half hour, put your arms up over your head, open your rib cage up, take 3 or 4 deep breaths, give a cough, get those lungs moving. Really, really important to do that. Take care of your lungs.
Take care of your lungs and take care of your whole immune system.
Absolutely. You bet.
And I hear you over and over saying how important a healthy diet is to the health of our lungs and the health of our immune system and its ability to cope with this pandemic.
Right. John, I didn't answer your second part of your question. How does the immune system work in the lungs? There is a vast, vast supply of lymphocytes and other immune cells sprinkled throughout the lungs because we're constantly inhaling respiratory viruses from the outside. That's just where you want your immune cells to interrogate these viruses, which ones are problem, which ones aren't, and to conjure up some antibodies to neutralize them. You know, we're dynamic creatures, and we have lots of flowing media through blood is meant to flow. If it doesn't flow, it clots. Urine is meant to flow. If it doesn't, it stagnates and gets infection. And the lung secretions, they are meant to be constantly moving up to the throat where we spit them out or swallow them. But they're part of the pulmonary cleansing system that you really want at this time to be functioning optimally. So again, that immune system, get enough sleep, get enough fresh foods in, don't eat a bunch of sugars, don't eat a bunch of oils. All these things interfere with your immune cell's ability to come up with these antibodies. So this is a time to make every meal count. That salad over there, that's medicine for my lungs. Ooh, that dish of kale over there, ooh, that's medicine for my lungs. Ooh, I'll take those steamed veggies, that's medicine for my lungs. Let every meal that comes in really start to heal your inflamed and infected tissues. Make every meal count. Your body is never not looking.
It's clear that we need an adequate supply of nutrients, specifically certain nutrients, in order to create a strong barrier against pathogens, including the dreaded coronavirus. And I want to ask you about a few of the things that people are trying. One of them is zinc. Now, we know that zinc can interfere with the other 6 known coronaviruses, including the original SARS and the 4 coronaviruses that cause the common cold. There was one meta-analysis that I read of 7 different studies that found that zinc supplements shortened the duration of a cold by 33%. And in 2019, a study titled The Role of Zinc in Antiviral Immunity was published in the journal Advances in Nutrition. And the researchers said that, and I quote, an abundance of evidence has accumulated over the past 50 years to demonstrate the antiviral activity of zinc against a variety of viruses and via numerous mechanisms, end quote. Well, Michael, zinc deficiency is strikingly common today. Will zinc supplements help people protect themselves against the coronavirus?
There's no question that the zinc atom is part of some very important enzymes that our immune cells use to neutralize viruses. And a zinc deficiency really puts those immune cells at a deficit. And with all our processed foods and devitalized foods, our zinc intake is really low. And it permeates this low zinc condition permeates all the tissues, including the immune cells. And so, no question, you want to keep your zinc stores in your tissues more than adequate. So what does that really mean? Well, first of all, like everything else, food beats supplements any day. And so the zinc is in whole grains and root vegetables and legumes. So you definitely want to keep eating those good zinc-containing foods. That said, if we're really trying to repair a deficit or prevent a zinc deficit, you can make a case for supplemental zinc. But I do this with some trepidation in that we're Americans, right? If a little is good, more must be better. And if 15 milligrams of zinc is the standard, I'll take 30, I'll take 45, I'll take a handful of them, and I'll keep that bad old virus away. Well, you can get zinc toxicity, and it can actually start interfering with immune systems if the concentration gets to toxic levels there. So I would say you just want to replete your zinc stores. And this is just shooting from the hip, but I would say take a 15 milligram zinc supplement 3 times a week. Just let it permeate into your tissues there and keep the tissue stores up. I don't think you need to take it every day, but might not hurt. Good idea. It's one more arrow in the quiver to use, but don't go overboard on it.
Well, you mentioned that legumes and whole grains are good sources and root vegetables. So are nuts, by the way, and pumpkin and sesame seeds.
Yay, right. Oh, definitely.
I want to ask you about something else. Tom Frieden, remarkable man. He's the former director of the CDC. He led the work that ended the Ebola epidemic. He's clearly an authority to be listened to today. And he said recently that taking vitamin D supplements could lessen how serious an infection with COVID-19 will become. Now, by some estimates, nearly half of all Americans are deficient in vitamin D. And a 2017 meta-analysis found that people who took vitamin D supplements reduced their risk of developing a respiratory tract infection. Michael, what's the story with vitamin D and the coronavirus?
We are finding how ubiquitous this vitamin is. And it's involved, certainly now we know, in immune function. And people who are grossly vitamin D deficient get more cancers, they get more infections, they get more pneumonias, etc. But also, we're understanding that vitamin D plays a real role in the integrity of membranes throughout the body, especially the mucous membranes in your throat, your eyes, the entire GI tract. You want that membrane healthy and with the tight junctions so contaminating substances don't gain access into our bloodstream. Well, vitamin D plays a major role in keeping those membranes integrity up to where they need to be. And if you let the vitamin D deficiency creep up, then your membranes aren't so tight and protective. And I think that's what Dr. Frieden is talking about. If you're encountering viruses, which we do every day, we're breathing them in by the billions every breath. You want those respiratory membranes in your lungs nice and healthy. If there's any viruses on the food, you want your GI membrane nice and healthy. And a decent vitamin D level is integral to that. It's not the entire story by a long shot, but this is time to keep your D levels up. I take 2,000 units a day and would recommend that people do that. If you think you're getting sick, you might want to kick it up to 5,000 units a day. But again, more is not better. Don't be taking 50,000 units every day as is available in pharmaceutical strength. That's not what you need. That's for patients with kidney failure. But 2,000 up to 5,000, not a crazy thing to do in these COVID times.
No, I think it might be a valuable thing to do for a lot of folks. I want to talk about selenium now. There was a study titled Selenium Deficiency and Viral Infection. It was published in the Journal of Nutrition, and it found a very powerful correlation between a deficiency in selenium and susceptibility to viral infections. Now, probably the richest food source of selenium are Brazil nuts, and I eat 2 Brazil nuts every day for that reason. Michael, what's the story with selenium and COVID-19?
Yes, it's a cousin to the zinc issue. There are selenium-containing enzymes that our lymphocytes use to interrogate viruses and to muster up their antibody response. We've got a nice jar of Brazil nuts in our fridge, and I chew up a couple of them pretty much every day as well. And again, the same cautions go as well. You want 50, 100 micrograms, those are millionths of a gram of selenium every day, but more is not better. And there most certainly is a thing called selenium toxicity. So again, if you've got selenium supplements at home, or just a couple of Brazil nuts, they're pretty hefty as far as their selenium dosage goes. 2 nuts, 3 at the most.
Well, thank you for that. I'm thinking about vitamin C now. Ever since 2-time Nobel Prize winner Linus Pauling famously advocated high-dose vitamin C to ward off a variety of illnesses from colds to cancer, there has been a lot of controversy about vitamin C. There are those who swear that high-dose vitamin C protects against viral infections, and there are those who say that's not true. So, Michael, we're in the midst of a global viral pandemic. What's your view of the role of vitamin C today?
Vitamin C is another one of these primordial molecules that every cell has. It's involved in the integrity of the cell membrane. And if you don't have enough vitamin C, your gums start to bleed, you get signs of scurvy. So it's important for membrane integrity, and that harkens back to what we said about keeping your GI membranes, your pulmonary membranes all healthy. So vitamin C certainly plays a role there. I would urge everybody, man, get those oranges and salads and vitamin C containing veggies going down. I think that's the best form You want to take an extra 5 gram thing is probably benign. But again, more is not better. I wouldn't take these mega doses of it and with fingers crossed that this will protect me. It's the food, it's the food, it's the food, more than the pills.
Understood. 5 grams is a pretty hefty dose.
It is.
And that's not the 20 grams that you were referring to as a megadose. I want to ask you about something else. There's some evidence now that eating mushrooms and also sea vegetables like wakame can be of help. Is that true, or is that just wishful thinking?
It's not surprising to think, especially because they've been on this earth for billions of years, that they're pretty good at fighting off viruses as well. And they know a thing or two about cellular immunity. And could they have various flavonoids and things that spruce up our immune system? There's certainly epidemiologic evidence that the people who consume mushrooms on a regular basis have a lower cancer rate. If they do get cancers, it seems to mute down the aggressiveness of the cancer. There's clearly some immune boosting properties to the fungal kingdom. We have them pretty much every day. And I think that's another reason that I feel really healthy. So again, it's not a matter of eating 5 pounds of mushrooms every day, but they should be frequent visitors to your soup pot and to your skillet. Or just steam them. And the same thing with the sea vegetables. These are ancient organisms, and seawater is teeming with viruses as well. And these plants know how to fight them off, and they've developed various polysaccharides and things as part of their defense mechanism. Not a bad idea to have some mushrooms and sea vegetables showing up on your plate on a pretty regular basis. I think that's just a good idea for nutritional health in general, but especially during these times, I would include those in your order from the groceries.
There are people today, including some very well-known celebrities, who are linking the coronavirus pandemic to 5G wireless networks. And some British citizens have even begun to burn down cell towers, believing that's true. Michael, do you think there's any truth to that?
Oh, absolutely not. Not saying that there can't be adverse effects. I wouldn't want one of these things right outside my bedroom window. That's true. The electromagnetic radiation can, do things to bone marrows and immune health, etc. But as far as spreading this virus goes, this is a highly contagious virus, and I just have to harken back. Where did this thing come from? And this thing, it's the novel coronavirus. Why is it novel? Why have you never seen it? Because it got created in the gut of some scaly anteater in a wet market in China that was eating the bat droppings from the infected bat right above it in the cage. And in that pangolin's body, the viruses that it had and the bad viruses were able to combine and create this new assortment of RNA that got when they decided to butcher the bat, and that cleaver came down and split the abdominal cavity. The infected bat urine went everywhere, and the bat feces went everywhere into the guy's face and into his eyes, and rode into his lungs, and there was case 0 there, and it spread wildly from there. And we're all looking for the vaccine and when is social isolation ending, etc. But as someone concerned about the root causes, I say, wait a minute. We can say, oh, those bad-eating Asians, no wonder that's a depraved practice. And yeah, it's a message from the bats that we should not be going into bat caves teeming with viruses and plucking the bats off the walls and butchering them and eating them. There's no reason to be eating bats here. But of course, the bigger context is that as we speak, in America alone, there are hundreds of millions of chickens cooped up in these vast warehouses, hundreds of millions of pigs, millions of cows cooped up, swapping viruses back and forth and coughing on each other. And we are spawning another set of these hellacious zoonotic viruses in our factory farm systems here. And we're going to play oh, we don't have it in America here. We don't do those strange things. Well, yes, we do. And it's just a matter of time before the next COVID jumps out, and it's going to be fiercer. It's going to have a mortality rate way beyond the 1% that we're looking at now. It will kill lots of young people. If we learn anything from this ordeal that we're going through, we should have a look at our food supply. There might be a virus or two on the broccoli from the store, but broccoli doesn't spawn these viruses. These are animal viruses. Must we re-examine factory farming? Yes, we must. So this is a time for lots of re-examination of everything. And on my money, it starts with our food supply.
Well, I hear you saying that the next pandemic is already coming unless we humans change how we interact with animals. And I agree with you totally about that. Almost all of the infectious diseases that have emerged in recent years, I'm thinking about Ebola and HIV/AIDS and H1N1 and MERS and SARS and Zika and Lyme disease and many, many others. All of them originally came from animals. And that's certainly true, of course, about the coronavirus. It seems that both raising animals for food or killing wild animals for food, each in their own way, can be dangerous activities because there is the risk of pathogens jumping from the animals to us humans. There's still a lot we don't know about this coronavirus. There's going to be a lot more learned in the months to come. But I've come to this conclusion. I want to see if you agree with me about this. If we continue to believe in the illusion of our mastery over nature, if we continue to see ourselves as the pinnacle of creation and treat other animals, therefore, as merely resources for us to exploit, then we are well on our way to the next pandemic and eventually to the extinction of our species. I think the Earth will continue to evolve, but it will do so with or without us. Do you see it that way too?
Oh, absolutely. This is, it's time to stop eating animals, stop killing them and stop eating them, and to push into the African jungles and kill monkeys and eat them. You pick up monkey viruses doing that. And again, these are poultry viruses, pig viruses, absolutely. And in a way, this is Mother Nature knocking on the door, saying, oh, Homo sapiens, you think you're high and mighty? Well, take this one, this little virus, little strand of RNA, and deal with that, because I got another bigger one brewing in the pig farms here. And what will it take for our public health authorities to deal with this truth? We can identify the RNA sequence of this virus, nucleic acid for nucleic acid, wonderful, brilliant. But the thought that it's coming from animal confinement, this massive elephant in the room. And it's like, having a contaminated well in a cholera epidemic, and it keeps seeding more and more infections. It's time to shut the well down. And as John Snow did back in the 1700s in London, he cut the handle off the Broad Street pump that was contaminated and stopped the cholera epidemic. And we need to do effectively the same thing when enough of the intensive animal agriculture here. And it would take a major overhaul of our agricultural system, no doubt. But, as we're watching our government to spend $2 trillion just for unemployment, well, let's build 5 fewer aircraft carriers and take that $100 billion and start the Farmers and Ranchers Transition Administration and help these people, make it easy for them to make this transition to plant-based agriculture.
Listening to you, I'm thinking about how more than half of all the land on Earth today that's considered habitable is used for agriculture. And most of that, more than 3/4 of that, is used for livestock, either as land for grazing animals or land to grow animal feed. Throughout recorded history, as agriculture has expanded and occupied more and more land, wildlife habitats have shrunken. And today there's a very deep concern that our growing food demands will lead to even less land for wildlife and to the extinction of ever more species. And it will also lead to higher numbers of those specific species that actually thrive when biodiversity declines. And scientists are now telling us that those species, the ones that increase in numbers as many other species disappear, are the very species, especially bats and rats, that are best at transmitting dangerous diseases to humans. It's a remarkable twist. It seems to me that if we continue to use such a high percentage of all the land on Earth for animal agriculture, we will be unwittingly encouraging the very species that are uniquely able to pass on to us deadly viruses. And so, Michael, does this mean that if we continue to demand a meat-based diet, if we continue to eat meat at the levels that we've come to think of as normal, we will be unintentionally promoting the emergence of more corona-like viruses and the emergence of new and increasingly virulent diseases?
Oh, absolutely. There's, Mother Nature. There, it's like a balloon. You squeeze it one place, it bulges out someplace else. Nature is undeniable in her life force that's moving forward one way or the other, and it's, I think, one of the most sad and heartrending effects that we humans have inflicted on this planet, the way we have just stolen, co-opted, plundered the natural world. Because, oh, I could be growing cattle out, I could run cattle out on those grasslands. Well, what about all the rabbits and bobcats and animals that call that their home? Too bad, it's vermin, get rid of them. I could make money off of that land, and that's the most important thing. And the cost of this is stunning. I heard it from you back in the Dive for New America days about the boiling a frog, and if you slowly heat the water, you can boil the frog, you won't jump out. Well, this is what's been happening with the natural world, and as my gray hairs will attest, I grew up in the 50s and the 60s, and what a different world it was biologically. There were birds everywhere. Springtime was deafening when the robins came back and the birds appeared. There were insects everywhere. There were moths around the lights in the evening. There were fireflies in the bushes. There was a living biological entity there, and I was very part of it. Is one reason it kindled my love of biology and eventually medicine. Well, 50 years of pesticides and herbicides and profit-making decisions to optimize crop yields and all of that and drive down the cost of your breakfast cereal. We've sprayed, millions of tons of these powerful poisons. And we're now living in a biological desert. Most of the birds are gone. The insects, I haven't seen a firefly in years now. It looks on the surface normal. There's still the green leaves on the trees and the hedges are still green. But we're living in a biologically bereft system. I lived in Hawaii for 11 years, and the same thing. The tourists come and they get in their kayaks and they paddle on the beautiful blue waters, and they think everything's fine. But when you put on your scuba gear like I do and go down, you see the coral are all dead, the fish are disappearing. You see the cost that we've inflicted upon the natural world, and it's dying right under our noses. And so this is not a theoretical concern someday. We need these insects to pollinate our food, to grow our vegetables, and we're killing them off by the legion. And it's time, again, the red lights are flashing and the Western Union telegram guys at the door saying, read this message, start treating nature with respect. This is serious business, and our meat-heavy diet is the driving force behind all this biological plundering, and it's really time for it to stop.
I agree with you about that very deeply, and it's painful to me to see these issues become politically polarized, and then people get entrenched, and we don't see how much we have in common, how interdependently we are interwoven together. I think we would all agree, whatever our political persuasions are, that if someone we knew and loved was hit by a car and had to be rushed to a hospital and put on a life support system, we would want that life support system to be working perfectly, effectively. We would want that to be available to the people we cared about so that they could heal. The truth today is we are all on a life support system. The biosphere, the web of life is our life
Yes,
support system, but we're trashing it. And
absolutely.
that to me is not a political issue. That's a moral issue because it deals with future generations. It's an issue for humanity to deal with. And we have to call on our humanity in order to address it. I sometimes think nature is really trying hard to tell us something that we don't seem particularly open to hearing.
Exactly, exactly. And and it's a tragedy of the highest order. When you got thousands of people dying right under your nose there, we got to say, something is definitely amiss here. And I'm not saying a million years ago on the African savannah that there might, to fend off starvation, that the hunting a gazelle may have been, needed or appropriate. But those days are long past, and it's gotten to such malignant proportions at this point that it's threatening the stability of the entire biosphere.
One of the challenges that we're facing today is that we need our immune systems to be functioning optimally, obviously. But a lot of us are feeling a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear. And when you look at the research, you see that fear and anxiety have a strong association with suppression of the immune system. And in these kinds of circumstances, I think of something Veronica Monet once said, which is that the hope that we need is not the blind belief in something that has little possibility of ever materializing. Rather, it's the hope that remains open to miracles while investing the sweat and the perseverance to lend the universe a hand in creating those miracles. Now, investing the sweat and perseverance to lend the universe a hand in creating those miracles, to me, I see this as a time to invest in the practices that lead to true health. I think it's time to double down on a healthy lifestyle. It's time to make yourself even healthier than ever during this crisis. It's time to seek out a really aggressive, healthy, and lifestyle regimen. And I think that people can help to defend themselves against the worst effects of the COVID-19 infection and help flatten the curve of hospitalizations by strengthening their immune systems through their food choices. And that's one of the reasons I'm so appreciative of your work, Michael, because that is a central principle that you are advocating all the time.
Yeah, the it's time for action. This is about getting your Homo sapiens body healthy and functional and strong and resistant to diseases. And it starts with the food. Now, as you mentioned, stress plays a role. It does. And it's not theoretical. When we are feeling anxious or fearful, our adrenal glands respond and they put out a gush of cortisol. And cortisol is a potent anti inflammatory, but it also suppresses the immune cell's ability to respond. And that's why it's used in immune rejection therapy and all that kind of stuff. Well, you don't want to be walking around with high cortisol levels here for the obvious reasons, because they suppress your lymphocytes' ability to make antibodies, etc. So, what to do? How to be less anxious? One, note that, as the Bible says, this too shall pass. The curves are flattening out, and we will get to the other end of this. And here we're psychologically going to be stressful to watch this grind on week after week. And this too shall pass. What we're doing is starting to help. So it's no time to get lackadaisical, but know that all these efforts are working. As dreadful as it is to not be able to work and earn a paycheck, oh, it's an American nightmare. But what's the saying? You find yourself in hell, keep walking, man. Don't stop. Just keep going. And that's what we have to do here. And so if you look at positive signs, they are there, and don't generate unnecessary anxiety about the state we're in.
One of the positive signs I see is I've never experienced so much worldwide cooperation.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
We have these nightmare scenarios when there's a natural disaster, an earthquake. Everybody goes crazy, every man for himself, and running around with guns and shooting everybody and taking all their goods. That's not really what happens. During one of these during an earthquake or a tsunami or a massive fire, after the initial trauma of the event goes by, the overwhelming response, people start to help each other. And they start to share and they check in on their neighbors and they maintain the social fabric and they reestablish the vital functions that society needs to have. We drop bombs on each other and do all these evil things. But on a personal level, when one of these massive disasters happen, we rally towards each other and our loving aspect comes out. It's so beautiful to see, as you just said. And so, it's hard to look for silver linings in this catastrophe. But as I said, realigning our relationship with the animals is one. But the general spirit of cooperation, of helping each other, of seeing that we are one family, do what you can do, even if it means just staying at home. But everybody needs to pitch in, and we are. And it's one of the hopeful things that's coming out of this. Is really life affirming. And one of the few silver linings that make me feel good about this thing is how the general response has been.
Well, I'm particularly inspired by the response from medical personnel. There are so many doctors and nurses and medical staff, people working who don't have those titles, don't get that type of income and status in the culture, but are still showing up in the hospitals, in the ERs, under conditions that are really difficult and challenging, and often without even the basic personal protection equipment that they should have. But they're showing up, they're helping, and there's something about that. I feel so much awe and respect and gratitude to those who are showing up to help in these circumstances. And I know you feel it too. I know all of our listeners do. We're living in a time of radical changes that are taking place, that are affecting all of our lives and placing the very future of human life on Earth in a different way. I remember, Michael, you saying years ago that your waiting room, as a doctor, your waiting room had expanded to include the entire human race and the whole Earth community. And I've always loved that about you. I've always appreciated that about you. And on behalf of myself and Ocean and everyone involved in the food revolution, everyone who's living on this earth today, I want to thank you for your longstanding commitment to healing, for your deep compassion, and of course, for being with us today.
Well, thank you, John. And I do want to just pick up on what you just said. I feel such pride in my fellow health professionals. As you said, it's unglamorous to be the cleaner, the floor cleaner at the hospital, but God love those people. They are keeping it functional and they go to work every day, and a lot of them are getting sick. And the doctors and the frontline ER folks and all those folks. But they talk about quietly heroic. And it's beyond unforgivable to send those people into battle against this virus without adequate protective gear. Don't get me started on that. What a squandering, what an insult to these heroic people. But I live in Florida now, and we are having our own quiet mini epidemic brewing here. And the cases are increasing because the governor here was way slow on putting out the call to lockdown. And as I see the cases going, Good Samaritan Hospital is a mile from my house here, and I'm expecting the call to come any day. We need docs to help us deal with this. And when I get that call, I will go and do what I can do to help lighten the load to my fellow health professionals. And so, indeed, we owe them a great debt of gratitude, and they're the true heroes in this struggle. But everyone who's cooperating is heroic in their own way. It's not easy to do this on anyone's part. And I appreciate your kind words. It's been such an honor over the years to work with you. We feed off each other's positive energies and each other's insights. And I think we're helping shine some light on some corners that need a good searchlight to shine on them. So thank you, and be assured that I will keep doing all that I can to bring love and harmony and healing into this world, as will you.
Indeed. We thank you so much, Michael, and all of the speakers in this summit. We have 17 medical doctors speaking in this summit. And you're also heroes to me for shining a light on what is possible for human beings to create the conditions for optimal health in every time, and especially in this time. We've been talking here with Dr. Michael Clapper, co founder of Moving Medicine Forward, and an author, speaker, healer, and a happy physician who gets the pleasure of helping his patients to heal. Michael, I want to thank you for your brilliant insights, which are so important at this point in history. Thank you for your visionary leadership, for your timely wisdom, and for your partnership in the food revolution.
Thank you, Ocean. It's been my honor, my pleasure. And keep up the great work, guys. You're real shining lights in this movement and in educating and help healing our populations. So it's an honor to help you in any way I can. I look forward to doing it in the future.
Thank you so much to Dr. Michael Clapper and to my dad and colleague, John Robbins, for that brilliant conversation. To express your opinions on what you've been hearing and to find out what others are saying, post and engage in the comments section on our broadcasts page. Make sure to refresh the comments using the Get the Latest Comments button so you can see the most recent ones that have been submitted. We did hear from Donna saying, is there any way to view the comments in real time? And yes, Donna, when you click Get the Latest Comments, you'll see up to the moment what's been submitted most recently, and then you can scroll on down to see more that have been posted over the course of time. I know there are a lot coming in. Let's keep the conversation going and flowing, and please do read other people's and respond to other people's comments, because building the community, building the interaction is part of how we connect, which is one of our basic human needs, especially in this time. Our next presentation will be an interview with Dr. Zach Bush. It will start at the top of the hour. Lisbeth said, during this pandemic, I'm focused on getting into the best shape ever at 50 and eating even healthier than before. And thanks to the pandemic, I have the time to listen to this summit. Thank you for creating such a healing place. We need this now more than ever. Thank you, Lisbeth. We're so glad you are here. Rachel said, I'm a devoted Food Revolution family member and have been gratefully participating in these summits each year. I am chagrined to admit that I hesitated to participate this year, discouraged by the turmoil of our global pandemic and the stressors of the economic downturn. I wasn't sure if I was in the right place of mind to fully absorb and appreciate the magnitude of information provided by this summit. Wrong. I am thrilled to be proven wrong. I tuned in somewhat distractedly and found my attention and my heart grabbed by the reassuring voices of Ocean and John Robbins. What a wonderful reunion to hear from these beloved health and wellness advocates. They share their knowledge and expertise with such love and compassion that my spirits were lifted. Hearing the wisdom and insight from the health expert interviews reminds me why I am a loyal listener. This summit is life-changing, it is uplifting, informative, and inspiring. Thank you to all involved. Well, thank you so much, Rachel. We are so glad you are here and finding comfort and support in this moment in your life journey. Thank you for being with us so much. Candia said, Whole Foods plant-based is the reason I am still alive today. It has helped me to combat acute and chronic pain, severe infections, and therefore combating suicidal reactions to surgical mesh pain. I now advocate helping others in the same situation as me. I am so grateful for this empowering information, and thank you so much, Dr. Clapper. Thank you, Candia. We are so happy you're here. Vivian said, shocking to know 80% of antibiotics used in factory farms in the U.S. How do other countries compare? Is this standard practice globally? Well, yes, Vivian, it is. About 2/3 of the antibiotics used worldwide are used in animal agriculture. In the U.S., it's 80%. So the US is more, but it's a lot worldwide, and it's a practice we must shift. Elise Dawson asked, how do you guys go about finding a primary care doctor who's not a med pusher, but instead focuses on things we can do to naturally improve our health? Well, a couple of resources you may find helpful, Elise. One is plantbaseddocs.com, and the other is plantbaseddoctors.org. Again, that's plantbaseddocs.com. The other is plantbaseddoctors.org. Those are both directories of doctors who support whole foods, plant-based diets for health and wellness. Of course, that doesn't mean they're all what you're looking for, but it could be a helpful resource. So what do participants say about the Food Revolution Summit? A lot of our participants have adopted the concepts, regimens, and dietary patterns that our panelists advocate. And one of them is Beth Laster from Glendale, Arizona. She participated in the 2018 and 2019 summits, and what she learned had a tremendous impact on her life. She asked if she could share it with you, and we said yes. So this is what she had to say.
Before the Food Revolution Summit, I had been living with fibromyalgia and IBS for 26 years, asthma and allergies for 23 years, and GERD for the last 2. I bought the summit in 2018 and I wanted to jump in, but my husband heard the word vegan and said, no way. I didn't want to disappoint him, so I set aside and continued eating meat, dairy, and junk food along with my husband so that our relationship didn't change. When the summit came back in 2019, I bought it again, and this time I pledged to jump in 100% with or without my husband's support. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. So even though he wasn't enthused, I stopped all meat, dairy, junk food, and sugar cold turkey. Well, actually cold tofurkey. I'm not going to lie, in the first 4 months it was hard. Not only was I dealing with intense cravings and I had to spend more time learning about new ways of eating, grocery shopping, and cooking, and my husband was having a hard time with it too. But I stood strong because for the first time in my life, I felt that if I didn't start taking care of myself now, it might be too late. I knew deep in my heart that this is what I needed to do for all the right reasons. And now I'm in better shape and I feel healthier and happier than I have in years. Since going 100% whole food plant-based, the fibromyalgia pain and the exhaustion are non-existent. I can visit my grand dogs and love on them without sneezing, wheezing, and itching, and the digestive and GERD symptoms are completely gone. Bye-bye medication. Plus, I dropped 28 pounds, which was a bonus. My complexion cleared up, my hot flashes are pretty much gone, and my blood work numbers have improved substantially. This has been life-changing. I'm so proud of myself, and my husband is proud of me too. I've become what I've always wanted to be. I own and manage 2 businesses, one with my husband and one by myself, and I haven't felt this focused, energetic, and organized since I was in my 30s before the fibromyalgia. I wake up feeling refreshed and ready to tackle the day. I'm much more clear about what I will and won't tolerate with my clients, and I feel more empowered than ever. My work is more intentional, and I have more confidence. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this important, life-changing information. I am forever grateful to you, and I feel like I have my life back. And I'm actually quite excited to turn 60 in April.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to Beth Laster for sharing those heartwarming words with us. Mary Kersey said, Dr. Clapper is so knowledgeable, cannot write fast enough, and there is so much great information to learn and remember. Awesome. Well, Mary Jean, we want to help you learn and remember this, and you won't have to take notes anymore if you don't want to, because we're going to gift you with an empowerment package. So you will own the MP3s and the transcripts for life. You can listen again anytime you want. And by the way, all the transcripts will come with source links to studies cited, so you can go deeper if you want to and learn more. Congratulations. Our team will follow up with you. And now we are ready to hear from Dr. Zach Bush on the new science of gut health. Here we go. Welcome to the Food Revolution Summit, where we explore how you can heal your body and your world with food. This is Ocean Robbins, and I am joined by my dad and colleague, John Robbins, in welcoming our guest, Dr. Zach Bush. Zach Bush is one of the few triple board-certified physicians in the United States, with expertise in internal medicine, endocrinology and metabolism, and in palliative and hospice care. The breakthrough science that Dr. Bush and his colleagues have delivered offers profound new insights into our modern disease epidemics, as well as human health and longevity. Dr. Bush's mission is to catalyze radical change in the mega industries of big farming, big pharma, and Western medicine at large. And he aims to empower you with leading-edge knowledge to support healthy digestion and a vibrant life. So now, Zach, my dad and I are so grateful to you for your brilliant work, and we're so glad to have this time with you. And now for this interview, I'm going to hand it over to my dad and colleague, John Robbins.
Well, thank you, Ocean, for that splendid introduction. And thank you, Zach, for being with us today.
Absolutely a pleasure to be with both of you as well as the whole audience.
It's a pleasure to be with you too, Zach. You know, there's an old saying that I've always appreciated: healthy soil, healthy food, healthy people. And recently I've been thinking that maybe we should update that phrase and say instead, healthy soil, healthy food, healthy gut, healthy people. Now, what I want to ask you, Zach, to start our conversation today is, as industrial agriculture came into being with its dependence on chemicals, including biocides and poisons, and its fossil fuel-based fertilizers, what happened to the health of the plants that we depend upon for our food?
As we went into the chemical farming, we started seeing weaker plants. And with the weakness of the immune systems of those plants and the lack of nutrient density in those plants, they started to become prone to disease. And so the pharmaceutical companies and chemical companies once again stepped up and said, no problem. We're going to roll out more and more complex solutions of chemical stews that you can mix up and spray on your crops to beat back the pests or the weeds that are attacking your weakened crops. And so that's where we stand today. Our farmers are profoundly dependent on inputs into their farm, and they're going bankrupt quite literally over the cost of putting in fossil fuel-based fertilizers, followed by herbicides and pesticides to take care of those weak crops.
Well, as you speak about chemical farming and its costs, I've been thinking about how nearly all the soybeans and corn grown in the U.S. today are genetically engineered, and they've been genetically engineered to withstand and tolerate Roundup, this herbicide. Most of the processed foods in American supermarkets contain unlabeled GMO ingredients made from soybeans or corn, and almost all of this soy and corn has been sprayed with the herbicide Roundup. 1 million tons of this toxic herbicide are used annually in the U.S. There is evidence suggesting that glyphosate, the primary active ingredient in the ubiquitous Roundup, can disrupt and kill beneficial bacteria in our guts and can lead to impaired immune function and really to a cascade of ill health effects. Could the rise in gluten intolerance and celiac disease that we are seeing be due in part to this herbicide being used in such enormous quantities?
That really became prominent in the late 1990s, which many people recognized pretty quickly was correlating with the advent of the Roundup resistant or Roundup ready crops that you described that debuted in 1996. And so as we started making corn, soybean, and subsequently many other crops, there's over 30 different crops that are now genetically modified to be Roundup resistant. And those crops, becoming a staple in our diet, then we see this rise in gluten sensitivity and other autoimmune diseases, things like autoimmune thyroid disease, autoimmune rheumatoid joint conditions, autoimmune skin conditions, and the like. And that kind of epidemic-like behavior of those previously very stable disease processes was a harbinger of this gut injury that we now have demonstrated in the laboratory, which is that when you take a little bit of gluten and you add it to the gut membrane, you can see a little bit of leak across that gut, the tight junctions, the Velcro-like proteins that hold your gut lining and your vascular lining, as well as your blood-brain barrier and your kidney tubules. All of these different compartments are defined by these tight junction systems. And we've shown that gluten can weaken those a bit. But if you add glyphosate at even trace amounts to that same bite of gluten, you have a synergistic effect. You amplify that injury. So we published that in a peer-reviewed science journal about 4 or 5 years ago, showing the mechanism of synergy between gluten and glyphosate, and really then demonstrating the mechanism by which that happens, which is through that tight junction injury.
When you talk about this connection between gluten and glyphosate and how the presence of glyphosate makes gluten more dangerous, more harmful, I've been thinking about the fact that we don't have commercially grown levels of genetically engineered wheat in production today. But the commercial, conventionally grown wheat harvest is often desiccated towards the end of its production cycle with Roundup. It helps the harvest be faster and more efficient. So non-organic wheat today is very, very often contaminated with Roundup or glyphosate. And I'm wondering if the shift to organic wheat might help out people who have problems with gluten sensitivity?
Yeah, it's interesting when we look at avoiding gluten in non-celiac, gluten-sensitive patients who present with kind of an irritable bowel syndrome picture. They have bloating, they have poor digestion, they have irregular bowel movements, often diarrhea and constipation cycles and the like. If we put those patients on a strict gluten-free diet where there's no gluten at all, at the end of 1 year, 85% of those are still reporting symptoms. They've, for the most part, reported improvement in those symptoms, but 85% still have the symptom. And so it really speaks to the fact that while we keep blaming gluten for the whole gluten sensitivity phenomenon and everything else, the deeper story is that glyphosate is the likely trigger for that population phenomenon to have occurred in the first place. And by eliminating gluten, you're only dealing with one of the many exposures that you're going to get to glyphosate. And so I believe that 85% of the people who are suffering with gut issues who have been attributed to gluten sensitivity, what they're really showing is that they're very sensitive to glyphosate. And so even if they decrease gluten, they might have a little less symptoms, but they're still getting glyphosate in much of their other food systems. And so number one is to kind of start to realize that gluten was just a symptom or a harbinger of this larger problem of glyphosate toxicity, glyphosate sensitivity. And then when we talk about gluten with glyphosate or without, I can definitely tell you that the vast majority of my patients who will travel abroad who have gluten sensitivity here in the United States will find that they can't resist that croissant on the streets of Paris, and they eat that thing and find out they feel fantastic, and there's no brain fog, there's no headaches, there's no gut disorder in the next few days, and they're just amazed, and so they start eating more. And by the time they've come back from their 2-week holiday in Europe, they come to my office just like in exuberant excitement that they've solved their entire gluten sensitivity syndrome, only to find out that a week or two later, when they eat a single piece of toast in the United States, it takes them 3 days to recover from the brain fog and the gut issues and everything else. And in fact, what they were experiencing was not just a gluten-free of glyphosate, but a diet that's much more free of glyphosate in Europe than it is in the United States. The faster the United States can come to terms with the fact that we don't have a gluten problem, we have a glyphosate problem. If we get rid of glyphosate, not only are we going to tolerate gluten better, we're going to tolerate the vast array of dietary sensitivities and allergies that now afflict our children. Our children are sensitive to just about every food they put in their body because the leak across their gut is so profound. So the immune system that lies deep to that intestinal lining is now being exposed to everything they eat and drink without that intelligent membrane intact. And so their immune system's constantly in this food fight, struggling for health, constantly in this inflammatory reaction to the environment around it. And so they have environmental sensitivities, they have food sensitivities, and the rest.
Well, when you're talking about glyphosate toxicity and how ubiquitous it is and how damaging it is, I find myself remembering something that you've said, which is that the microbiome has now come to be seen as the foundation of human life and health and human consciousness itself. And I find that to be an extraordinary statement. I mean, it's clear that we have vastly underestimated how important our gut microbiome is to our overall health. But you go further. You're saying, if I'm understanding you accurately, that the microbiome is the foundation of human life and health and human consciousness. Zach, can you explain why you say that?
The self-identity of the human system, starting at the gut lining, protecting us from the outside world, is fully reliant and regulated by our interaction with the microbiome. Without the microbiome, we lack that gut barrier. When we lose the microbiome, we lose that self-identity. We start to get that leaky gut phenomenon, which again leads quickly. We've shown in our laboratories that within seconds of the leaky gut, you develop leaky brain. The tight junction system that separates the brain from our own vascular blood supply also collapses. And so we've got leaky gut, leaky brain, as soon as we lose that microbiome support. And so it's an extraordinary look at the checks and balances, if you will, that nature designed us within, which I think looking at our behavior is brilliant. If we as a species fail to align ourselves with nature and continue to be consumptive and combative in our behavior towards Mother Nature and towards our planet, we will fail in our own self-identity and therefore our consciousness, and we will disappear.
When you talk about us failing in terms of our self-identity and our consciousness, I'm thinking about the incidence of many neurological conditions, serious ones, are skyrocketing. I'm thinking about Alzheimer's. I'm thinking about other forms of dementia, about autism and attention deficit disorder, about migraines and depression, about MS and Parkinson's. And these kinds of conditions are increasing every decade, and not by 10%. Some of them are doubling or tripling or even quadrupling. And obviously, something is very, very wrong. From the birth of our species, we have co-evolved with the microorganisms that live within our bodies. Now, some of the leading scientists and researchers who are studying the human microbiome today are saying that we are experiencing an extinction within that parallels the extinction of species gripping the planet. And it seems to me that the internal ecology of our guts, the health and diversity of the microorganisms that live within it, play a pivotal role in our neurological and mental health, in our consciousness, as you've said. Zach, could the decline in the diversity within our microbiomes be partly responsible for the skyrocketing rates of serious neurological diseases we're experiencing?
There's no question at this point in the science. It's pretty well documented now across so many university and private laboratories across the world now that our microbiome is not only manufacturing the kind of substrates or the basic communication network of that neurologic system, it's also responsible, as I mentioned earlier, for the protection of the brain with this blood-brain barrier. So as the blood-brain barrier collapses under the pressure of glyphosate, and the lack of protection from the microbiome that's dying under the pressure of glyphosate. If I haven't said it previously, it's worthwhile just hammering home the understanding that glyphosate has been patented as an antibiotic and also as an antiparasitic and also as an antifungal. So the fact is this thing functions as a very profound killer of the microbiome. So you're killing the microbiome in soil, but as we drink and eat more and more of this compound, we're killing that microbiome within our gut. And as we get narrower and narrower in our species representation within the gut microbiome, we become more and more prone to all of the diseases, neurologic perhaps first, and then subsequently the chronic inflammatory conditions of everything from acne on down to cancer. And so the accumulation of inflammation in the body is now being very, very specifically linked to the microbiome. So much so that we can now show that lacking specific bacteria in your gut not only increase your risk of cancer, we can actually pinpoint the species of bacteria that went missing as to which cancer you're at risk for. So if you suddenly lose the presence of a mycobacteria in the breast, you'll get breast cancer. So we can kind of pinpoint these exact changes in the microbiome and the risk of and the advent of and then the death or survival of a cancer. And so that's so carefully now being teased out in the genomic data that our diseases are directly the result of a lack of ecosystem diversity, ecosystem connection.
Zach, I hear you saying that as the diversity of our microbiome ecosystem has been depleted, we've become more susceptible to many different diseases, including cancer. And a lot of this seems to be happening due to our exposure to glyphosate, which is now the most widely used agricultural chemical in the world today, and which was patented not only as an herbicide, but also as an antibiotic, which means that it's a killer of many bacterial species. And so when we get it in our system, it greatly diminishes the diversity of our microbiome. Zach, do we know what happens to rates of mood disorders, such as depression and anxiety, when people are exposed to antibiotics?
The best studies that have been done in this environment are looking at major depression and anxiety disorder. And what they've done is demonstrate that with one exposure to an antibiotic course in a year, a woman will have a 24% increase risk of major depression in the next 12 months after one course of antibiotics. After the same course of antibiotics, she'll have an increase of 17% risk of an anxiety disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, panic attack, the like. With two courses of antibiotics in a single year, that risk skyrockets. And so now you're at 54% increase in major depression and 44% increase in anxiety disorder. So the average woman now being exposed once or twice a year in the United States to an antibiotic is facing this collapse of the ecosystem that would have manufactured the serotonin and dopamine along the gut lining that would have produced, a resilient brain. And as that serotonin and dopamine depletion happens, you start to lose that resilience and you are prone to these diseases.
If we truly need to take an antibiotic, it can help to take the supplement N-acetylcysteine, because then the degree of mitochondrial damage and free radical production is markedly reduced without any loss in the effectiveness of the antibiotic to kill the target bacteria. I find it hopeful that we can dodge some of the side effects of antibiotics by taking N-acetylcysteine.
Yeah, the reason why that's important is because we now recognize that some very specific species of bacteria are necessary to be present along the gut lining to stimulate something called enteric endocrine cells. These constitute as much as 10 to 15% of the entire gut lining, which is a huge system. Your gut lining covers 2 tennis courts in surface area. And 10 to 15% of that surface is not just a barrier cells of the epithelium that's responsible for absorbing water or nutrients. It's actually these little enteric endocrine cells that are the manufacturing plant for more than 90% of your serotonin and more than 50% of your dopamine. And another 40% of your dopamine is produced in your kidney tubules in a similar fashion. And so between your gut and your kidneys, you're making 90% of your serotonin and dopamine in these membrane systems that are far flung from the brain. And so the enteric endocrine cell is a human cell interacting with microbiome that can make the serotonin and dopamine. But if you take the antibiotic and lose that workforce of the bacteria, your enteric endocrine cells sit there without being able to manufacture the right neurotransmitters. So to get back that aspect of an antibiotic injury, you really need to get back into nature. The big studies coming out now on probiotics after antibiotic exposure are really terrifying to find out that the probiotics are causing just as much suppression as the antibiotic in our ability to diversify the bowel flora. And so we are selling, billions of dollars, $40 billion a year now in probiotics around the world. And now we find out that that was a chasing after the wind, and planting a monoculture of bacteria in your gut is an ion planting a monoculture of corn and soybeans across the entire United States. By planting just a few species and therefore taking over the entire terrain with those few species, our body's unable to recover the diversity that we would see in a healthy gut or ecosystem. And so in our clinic now, we're very strict, taking everybody off of probiotics and get them back out into nature. And the more time we spend outdoors, the faster we regain that microbiome. And so I started a huge campaign this year, #BreatheYourBiome on social media. And it's been one of the most successful things we've started in the last 5 years, because it's really bringing the message that if people will get outside and breathe real air in complex ecosystems, their bodies can recover that ecodiversity that they are desperately in need of. And it's very cool that Mother Nature would have planned our bodies to be kind of these receptive petri dishes for Mother Nature. So if we go out and breathe, our sinuses and our upper respiratory tracts are immediately embedded with microbes that then diversify that upper respiratory tract, that then have an influence on the complexity and biodiversity of our upper GI tract, which then influences our colon. And so by breathing our ecosystem, we can really get engaged in nature. Furthermore, we can eat our biome, right? And so fermented foods are foods that have been cultured with bacteria and fungi. And so I'm a huge fan of cultured foods and fermented foods back into the diet. And so we really press on miso soup as a huge staple. Miso is probably the most intelligent ferment that's out on the marketplace. Your average US distributed Japanese miso is 1 year to 3 years of fermentation. And then if you go to Japan for the really good stuff there, they're 7 years in fermentation. So imagine a soybean or a red bean, depending on which type of miso, that's digested every 2 to 3 days by a microbial population over and over again. Those same nutrients redigested, reprocessed, remanufactured, recombined, retransformed over and over again for a 7-year period. The intelligence in that, obviously after 7 years, there's not a single molecule of that original soybean or red bean left in that fermentation. It's all been transformed into a much more diverse, much more eco-intelligent diversity of nutrients and bionutrients, phytonutrients, all kinds of different things in there that are going to have a healthful impact. And so miso soup is a favorite. I love kimchi as another, long-standing Asian favorite there coming out of Korea. Love the kind of international scene. You've got things like sour Reuben, which is the turnip that's been fermented. It's one of my favorites. It's so delicious. It's got such a complex sweet to sour to kind of umami flavor spectrum. You've got sauerkraut and the like. So from stem to stern, your ferments are a huge win for the gut. There you're being exposed to hundreds or thousands of different airborne species that are digesting those nutrients. And it's not just about getting the microbes in that ferment, it's about getting the nutrients that have been broken down by those bacteria and fungi to supply a complex compost-like material for your gut to support the recovery of a complex ecosystem.
You said something a few minutes ago that I want to go back to and see if I understood you accurately, because it's very important what I think I heard you say. People are spending a lot of money today on probiotic supplements. They do so after taking a course of antibiotics. They do so many other times as well. And these pills contain billions of bacteria, but in almost every case, those huge numbers are made up of only a handful of different strains of bacteria. Meanwhile, there are tens of thousands of different species of bacteria that make up our microbiome. So if I'm hearing you accurately, Zach, and correct me if I'm not, I hear that you're saying that typical probiotic supplements provide only a handful of species, and so we're not doing ourselves any favors by taking these products.
That's exactly right. It's increasingly likely that we're doing harm with these products. If you had a really diverse, healthy microbiome, and then you took a probiotic, there probably is little opportunity for an injury there because your diversity of biome should be able to combat that monoculture attempt of the probiotic. But if you have a damaged microbiome, either by antibiotic exposure from your physician, but much more likely antibiotic exposure from your food. And so again, the glyphosate residues in our food is a much more prevalent antibiotic than that which we're faced with from our physicians. And so I would say certainly in the United States, every single day, every consumer is being faced with an antibiotic injury from our food-borne glyphosate residues. And keep in mind, glyphosate is only one of 64 herbicides and pesticides that are typical in a daily consumption of an American. And so we're constantly being devastated by these antibiotic exposures pretty much with every meal. So much so that we find 75% of our air contaminated with Roundup in the United States, 75% of our rainfall contaminated with Roundup. So, it really is a ubiquitous experience now that our microbiome is under collapse. And therefore, I believe we see this huge explosion of all the chronic diseases, childhood cancers to autism to autoimmune diseases in our kids to attention deficit disorder and the like, all the way to, as you pointed out, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's dementia and the other dementia disorders, as well as the neurodegenerative conditions that have also gone explosively in the last 10 years, including things like ALS, MS, and the like. So All of these conditions are pointing back to this constant pressure of the microbiome. And you're exactly right, John, in that 3 species of bacteria at billions of copies in a probiotic can never equate to the complexity and beauty of the ecosystem Mother Nature intended for us. As you mentioned, 30,000, 40,000 species of bacteria is likely to be kind of the minimum of an ideal ecosystem on a human body. The amount of fungi compared to that is just astronomical. But even before the fungi, the parasites, there's 300,000 species of parasites on planet Earth that interact with our immune systems and the like. There's 5 million species of fungi. And then the viruses, we've never even been able to begin to categorize the number of species. We know that there's somewhere around 10 to the 31 viruses at the most conservative estimates. That's a 1 with 31 zeros after it. That's 10 million times more than our stars in the entire universe. We are now starting to try to wrap our heads around that this is a truly galactic, universal scale of complexity and beauty that Mother Nature has knit into this little tiny planet in the middle of outer space. We have been knit with this intelligence of biodiversity. And when we collapse that biodiversity, I believe we immediately see a macro response to that as well. As we mentioned, human consciousness is tied to this microbiome experience. And it's profound, I think, when we think about our politics and sociopolitical environment today, that we're finding more and more rhetoric around isolationism and around this warlike mentality. It's extraordinary to me that we keep going through these cycles of self-destructive behavior that seem to accelerate as we collapse the planet's health. And so I think all of that is somehow tied together. And if we keep falling back to a pill with a few species, we're going to miss the point. The point was not to take another probiotic. The point was to get out into Mother Nature and to diversify.
The picture you're painting is awe-inspiring of the profound interconnectedness between life at every level within us and without us, inside and outside of us. And I'm getting a sense that the distinction that we sometimes make between good bacteria and bad bacteria is really rather superficial, that in fact it's the diversity in most cases of bacteria in our microbiomes, which are in our guts, but elsewhere in our bodies as well, on our skin, in our mouths, in our noses, really everywhere in all of our organs, that it's the diversity that matters. Is that what you're saying?
I really appreciate that point because I think that it's so easy to skim by that. The damming of the microbiome happens in Western medicine all the time. As a physician, I spent all those years in a hospital. You basically wake up in the morning and go into the hospital with a huge list of things you need to kill. An example of this is Pseudomonas. Pseudomonas is one of these bacteria that we totally fear in a burn center or hospital system, because if Pseudomonas gets into a wound, it can just kill a patient so quickly and can be very difficult to manage. Well, it turns out that Pseudomonas is extremely well equipped and uniquely equipped in nature to actually be able to digest radioactive material that's found in cigarette smoke or radioactive isotopes from our nuclear power plants or nuclear weaponry or all of this other stuff we're exposed to around the planet. And so, to find out what one of our biggest, pathogens or bad guy bacteria could actually be the savior to one of the most destructive things we've put onto this planet is again a lesson that there is no bad guy in the microbiome.
Addressing the terrain of our bodies and healing our microbiomes is so important. Justin and Erica Sonnenberg are Stanford microbiologists, and a few years ago, they decided to take steps to boost their own family's microbial diversity. They are specialists in what constitutes a good gut. They've written books on it and published many academic papers on it. And they began eating a whole foods, plant-strong diet. They threw out all the processed foodstuffs in their kitchen. They began eating a wide variety of vegetables. They got a dog. They began hand milling their own wheat and making their own sourdough bread. They planted a large home vegetable garden. They started making their own sauerkraut. They were really serious about restoring their family's microbial diversity, and they archived some of their microbes from before they started this experiment. And then, after a few years of these changes, they compared those archived microbes from years back with recent ones. And the results were really amazing. They discovered that their family's microbial diversity had increased by half, which is a huge difference. Zach, what benefits would you expect someone might experience in their health as a result of increasing their microbial diversity?
It's pretty much going to affect every system in the body, right? So the brain, I think, is the first to give you that sense of recovery. There's a sense that a lot of my patients report as they start to improve the microbiome diversity in their gut. It's really around a sense of safety and resilience. Like, oh, I remember feeling kind of bulletproof. I remember feeling like I could get through a day without, walking on the brink of inflammatory collapse or brain fog and all of this. And so this real sense of like, wow, I am good. And if I get hit with a little bit of adversity today, that's fine. I've got a cushion. And so the body seems to be able to sense how close you are to that cliff and how often you're stepping off that cliff edge. And as you back away from the cliff edge, there's just this sense of peace that can settle into the parasympathetic nervous system, in that rest and digest kind of state of the parasympathetics that says, wow, I'm really good right now. So that's a little hard to put your finger on as far as like, how do you report that? How do you experience that? But I put that in the ear of your audience here just to get a sense of like the body is intuitive. The body does know what kind of reserve you have in the tank. And as you fill that reserve up, you're going to have that sense of improved resilience. Second of all is just the direct neurologic stuff. Tension headaches, stress headaches, those are the ones that tend to go quite quickly as the microbiome improves. More subtle endocrine stuff that you'll notice, things like skin health. And as you diversify your microbes, your skin health radically can shift. Things like eczema, psoriasis, the inflammatory red face that's so common for the consumer today can resolve. Acne and the like can resolve. And so these are kind of paramount to shifts in the estrogen, testosterone, progesterone ratios in the body and the consequences on the skin there. Other things that you can notice is improvements in symptoms related to autoimmune conditions. So 1 in 4 girls today have autoantibodies to their thyroid, and you can see reductions of antibodies to the thyroid gland or other autoimmune targets. You can see reductions in cholesterol levels. You can see reductions in inflammatory and vascular markers like your CRP or inflammatory cytokines, interleukins, and the like. And so there's a bunch of both subjective as well as objective findings in the laboratory and blood work that you can follow as you improve that. I do want to mention, as you stated, that these guys out of Stanford, one of the main things they did was switch to this plant-based diet. The reason why my clinic has been using a plant-based diet for the last 10 years is because you get such an interesting diversity in micronutrients, which is, of course, going to, in the same way, support and encourage diversification of the microbacteria. But it turns out it's a part of the food that we rarely talk about that is probably most critical to recovery of the microbiome, which is the fiber. The soluble and insoluble fibers that are in your fruits and vegetables are critical, it appears, to the diversity and health of the microbiome of the human gut. And so I really believe that's probably one of the leading reasons these guys saw a marked improvement in their health was that marked increase in complex fiber populations there in the gut.
Well, I'm hearing that if we're going to have a flourishing and diverse collection of beneficial bacteria in our digestive tracts and elsewhere in our bodies, and if we're going to lower our incidence of Western diseases, one of the central keys is to eat a whole food, plant-strong diet that is rich in both soluble and insoluble plant fiber. That is what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. And that's what I set out to do in 2010 with my nutrition clinic. And I'd read much of your work as well as the works of Colin Campbell and the incredible work of Dean Ornish and the like. You guys have all really created a huge body of work that dated back, 40 years by the time I'd started my clinic, suggesting that this plant-based diet could be a foundation for health, to eliminate the need for all of these diseases that have become epidemic in our environment, type 2 diabetes and polycystic ovarian syndrome, infertility at large, all of these things included in all the other conditions that we've talked about, autoimmune and cancer and depression and autism or the like. So I really want to just call attention to your body of work and the attention you've brought to the power of this plant-based diet.
Well, thank you, Zach. When it comes to a healthy and a diverse microbiome, a whole foods plant-based diet really does shine. And one of the reasons is the large amounts of fiber that are found in whole plant foods. Now, some people think that steak is a good source of fiber because it has gristle, but that isn't fiber. And in fact, no animal food, no meat, no dairy product or egg contains any fiber whatsoever. What I want to ask you now, Zach, is have you developed any substances or processes in your clinic to help heal the gut barrier system and to improve the accessibility of nutrients?
Now in my plant-based clinic, we're using these carbon metabolites to recover very quickly the gut barrier system to improve nutrient delivery. And so that's been kind of the new cutting edge of gut health coming out of our laboratories, is an understanding that if we could provide back this original communication network, this carbon molecular family provided by a diverse microecosystem of 60 million years ago, we can get this really profound foundation for biology to begin again. And then, this is a sterile product, doesn't have bacteria and fungi. It's not a probiotic. It's just the communication network from that diverse microbiome. And within days of that, you see this rapid diversification happening in the microbiome and the ecosystem therein. So that's where we, spend most of our science time now understanding what was Mother Nature's plan when she planted these things in her soil 60 million years ago. Could she perhaps have anticipated what we would do with Roundup, because it functions as an antidote to Roundup at the gut membrane as well as at the blood-brain barrier? The supplement of these molecules, interestingly, doesn't actually heal anything. It doesn't produce anything. Instead, it amplifies the human's response or the animal's response to injury to accelerate the intrinsic or natural healing capacity of that system. And so it's a very beautiful demonstration that Mother Nature planned that the ecosystems of our soils and of our gut would accelerate the communication, accelerate the healing capacity of human systems on this precious planet of ours. And if there's something extraordinarily profound about that message of grace, what would a planet be if it so planned for our deleterious and consumptive and destructive behavior on her soils today, and she would give us an antidote from 60 million years ago to that injury? There's something spiritual in that I have a hard time putting my finger on, but it's profound and humbling, and if not terrifying, to imagine that we in our capacity for destruction was perhaps anticipated by this planet, and our own design with its checks and balances that would predict our disease and our ultimate extinction if we step out of nature too far would be planned for, and that there would be a pathway out of that extinction event, that there would be a pathway towards biodiversification.
What you're showing us here is spectacular. It's profound. It's immense. A moment ago, you used the word grace and also the word spirituality. I want to ask you one last question. We're clearly at a major tipping point in human history. There are now knowledgeable and credible scientists saying that we have caused and are causing so much damage to the web of life and to the climate that our species might only remain viable on this earth for another 70 or 100 years. This is an almost impossibly profound reality to consider. Zach, I know you are certified in hospice and palliative care as well as other specialties. Have you learned anything from working with people in their final stages of life? In fact, have you learned anything from the people who have died under your care but who you were able to resuscitate that might help us to live with the current state of the world?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that this is, the most salient point of the human journey now. It's amazing on one level that we have the consciousness, that we have the intellectual capacity to witness and document our own extinction. We're about halfway there now. We've wiped out 45% of biology on Earth in the last 50 years. By some accounts, it might be 55% wiped out in 40 years, but somewhere in that range. And in exactly the same proportions, our own species is bringing itself to the brink, in that we have lost 47% of sperm in Western civilized countries over the same amount of time. And so in a single lifetime, in my short lifetime, almost 50% of sperm counts has disappeared. We now have 1 in 3 males in westernized countries that is infertile by sperm count. And so that is what it looks like to approach our extinction event. Chronic disease at somewhere between 48 and 52% of our children now with a chronic disorder or disease by the time they're 17, coupled with massive explosion of chronic disease in our elderly and midlife adults, coupled with infertility. And so that's our march towards this extinction event. And I very much agree that humans are on track for about a 70-year extinction point. And interestingly, when I started working with farmers a few years ago, they had actually worked out that there was only 60 harvests left on the planet at our current rate of consumption and destruction of nature's soils. And so it's interesting that their termination of soil was so closely linked to our own termination event. And so I think it's, can be proven from any angle now that we are looking at the tipping point of life on planet Earth again. It's had 5 major extinction events in the past, and we're looking at the 6th now. This time by our own hands, but through the same mechanism. All of the previous major extinction events have been through destruction of soil and ocean pH and biochemical balance. And so we have destroyed some 97% of soils around the Earth now, and now we're seeing our pH of our oceans changing and rising and damaging. And so we're right at that tipping point that the planet has shown us before, that this is where life disappears, and you guys are playing with it again. And so this is our hospice moment as a species. We have been given a terminal diagnosis. It's now inevitable that we're going to disappear with the rest of the planet if we stay on the current course. And it's beautiful for me to be around a hospice patient that when they come to the realization that, okay, longevity is no longer my goal. I'm here now to make the most of every single day. I'm here to be awake and be present with the people I love and to say to them the most deep things that I've meant to say to them over and over again and have never made the time for. Now I'm going to say these things. And we see such incredible reclamation of relationships and healing happen in those last weeks and days of a person's life so often. And in that journey, we can take that all the way to the death moment where when a patient is now unconscious, is just right at the end point of biology, so often they suddenly wake up with an extraordinary amount of clarity and will speak a few sentences or even be awake for a couple hours, and then they'll go to sleep and never wake up again. I am hopeful that we are going to have one of those moments as a species. We are going to, in our hospice chapter, we have the opportunity to wake up and be totally nearly clairvoyant in our understanding of why we're here, how we got here, where we're going, what is our purpose here. And in that, I think that we have the opportunity for total transformation to occur, such that we would not disappear from the planet, but that we would learn almost instantaneously to behave differently, to behave rather than a consumptive, in a reconstructive, in a regenerative relationship to Mother Nature. It would change our consumer industries. It would change the products that we surround ourselves with. It would change the clothing on our back. It would change the food on our plate. It would change the relationships in our households so instantaneously. That's the final chapter of humans now. Either we're going to transform radically and almost overnight, or we're going to disappear in our hospice moment, in a moment of perhaps real clarity of why we were here. Why did we do the human journey of 200,000 years? What was that for? What were we here to learn? And what were we here to co-create with at the energetic or soul level as much as at the biologic level? And so I think all of those things are real. All of those things are potential. And my patients that slip to the other side of the veil, as you had mentioned, and get resuscitated, they come back with an extraordinary message. They come back with this extraordinary message again and again of, I felt completely accepted in those couple of seconds on the other side, in those minutes of being dead in the body. I experienced complete acceptance, and I have such peace about where I'm headed now. And I think that we could achieve that in the body not after death, but in this lifetime, if we all chose to take the silence and to move ourselves to a space of contemplative interaction with Mother Nature, such that her microecosystems of her soils and her air and her trees and her plants and her animals would so inform us, so interact with us, so show us their grace that we could wake up on that other side of the veil still in this body before our extinction event and behave differently and create a new social and political structure that would be humanitarian, that would be human based rather than American based, or instead of empire, we would have a social structure based on nature's regenerative belief systems, inclusive of diversity rather than exclusive of that biodiversity.
What a beautiful vision you give us of an opportunity here for complete acceptance and peace of ourselves and our world and our dilemmas and our problems and our challenges and their possibilities and what still may yet be for us. Zach, it's been an amazing experience talking with you. I appreciate it very much. And on behalf of myself and of Ocean and of everyone involved in the food revolution, I want to thank you for your remarkable work, for your passion to help people live beautiful and healthy lives in a healthy world, and of course, for being with us today.
I'm so grateful to both of you, honestly.
We've been sharing in an extraordinary conversation with Dr. Zach Bush, a triple board certified physician in the fields of internal medicine, endocrinology, and hospice care, and one of the world's foremost experts on the microbiome. Zach, you are tapping the rigor of science, the strength of humanity, and the intelligence of nature to restore our health and to help to heal our world. We are so immensely grateful for your wisdom, for your penetrating insights, and for your partnership in the food revolution.
Thank you so much, Ocean. Thank you, John, for your wisdom and time and your leadership in this field for the last many decades.
Thank you so much to Dr. Zach Bush and to my dad and colleague, John Robbins, for that mind-blowing, profound conversation. To express your opinions on what you've been hearing and to find out what other people are saying, please post and engage in the comments section on our broadcast page. Let's feel the community alive that is here right now. Hundreds of thousands of people joining in this summit from all over the world. We want to hear from you. What has stood out to you today from today's broadcasts? How does this land in your life? How does it impact you? And please respond to other people's comments as well. What have you heard that's inspired and touched you? What are they sharing that is touching to you? How can you relate to what other people are sharing? Let's keep the conversation going. And remember, you can push the Get the Latest Comments button, and it will refresh the comments so you can see the most recent ones that have been submitted. Sasha Palmer from Dubai said, "Our minds are blown. So much now makes sense. We are learning so much. The generosity of your speakers sharing their expertise is humbling. Myself and my husband are listening in with our jaws on the floor. Thank you so much." Well, Sasha, thank you, and thank your husband for being here with us and learning and growing and participating fully. Linda Gilmore said Dr. Bush's message is simultaneously devastating and encouraging. Our health and our earth is in bad shape, but we can still affect the outcome. Thank you for the tools to do so. Yes, Linda, thank you. It is both devastating and encouraging. And I find that anytime I'm in the presence of devastating or painful realities, my heart can either expand or shrink. I either get big enough to hold it and allow it and perhaps find my own response, or I shrink away and get smaller in some way in response. And when we're facing something as big as the future of life on Earth or the COVID-19 pandemic, I think we're all tasked with the opportunity here to allow ourselves to get a bit bigger and to hold it and to allow the reality of what we're up against to evoke in us whatever response we may be capable of. And I love how Zach Bush is holding the immensity of it with such wisdom and such compassion. On day 5 of the Food Revolution Summit, we're going to focus on the planet. We're going to look at how our food choices and our life choices impact the future of life on Earth, and the extraordinary reality that the same food choices that are best for your health personally are also best for our world and all of us collectively, and the future that our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren will hopefully inherit. So stay tuned. Lee Anderson said how John summarizes to make points clear is wonderful. Yes, I so agree, Lee. It's one of the things that I most love about working with him and bringing these summits into the world is the extraordinary summaries and questions he asks. He has been studying this and a leader in the food revolution for decades, and the wisdom that my dad brings is so extraordinary. So thank you for noticing and for sharing it with us. Debbie asked a question. She said, I love dried seaweed sheets. No, they have a lot of sodium. I'm wondering if they would count as a sea vegetable like Dr. Clapper talked about. Well, Debbie, yes, dried seaweed sheets are a sea vegetable. And so absolutely. And a lot of seaweeds are high in sodium because, of course, the ocean is high in sodium. And so if they're coming from the actual sea, then that's going to be part of the dynamic. But so that's just something to keep in mind. If you're looking out for lowering your sodium consumption, then consider seaweeds in the equation. But absolutely, there's a lot of positive health benefits to vegetables of all kinds, including sea vegetables. Angel said mushrooms, sometimes fresh or not available, are supplements just as good. Well, Angel, the science of mushrooms is extraordinary, and I just want to say how healthy they are for us in general. And fresh is usually best when cooked. Raw mushrooms are problematic. But if you can cook your mushrooms, then that's great. However, if you don't have access to fresh mushrooms, then dried are a great second best. They have tremendous benefits as well. The studies I've seen, they're probably, depending on what you're looking at, maybe 3/4 as beneficial. But the nice thing about dried is that you can access some harder to get varieties, and a diversity of mushrooms is wonderful too. But button mushrooms, good old white mushrooms, or portobello mushrooms can be quite beneficial as well. You don't have to go just for the fancy things that cost $30 or $50 a pound or whatever. So make use of the fungi. They are fantastic. Cindy said, listening to this is so heartening. I've been following FRN since 2017, thanks to Susan Pierce Thompson and Bright Line Eating. I've been happy, thin, and free for 2 years now and eat a whole food, plant-based diet thanks to you. I'm 67 and feel healthier than I have since I was a teenager. Thank you, John and Ocean, for all you do. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for being with us and sharing with us, and congratulations. And for those who don't know, Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson will be sharing about the neuroscience of weight on day 4 of the Food Revolution Summit, so stay tuned for that. Her insights are absolutely extraordinary. Jill said, I've been a member of the Food Revolution for over a year now. It has changed my life. I'm so fortunate that I now have improved my health at age 64. I no longer suffer from obesity, heart disease, and stress. I especially care that I have moved away from the horrible animal farms and now eat a 100% plant-based diet. My husband is nearly there as well. It's critical that my husband and I utilize all these important messages to be able to fight the COVID-19 virus if we are exposed. Yes, Jill, thank you so much for applying all of this in your life. Congratulations to you and your husband for the benefits you are experiencing. And we're so grateful you're here with us. Juan said hi from Puerto Rico. I was one time full plant-based, and I was super without my usual health conditions. Then I got back to ordinary meat diet, and all my conditions have come back. I think it is a challenge that involves strong willpower and a daily focus to change behaviors. I'm glad to be here. Well, Juan, we are so glad you are here too, and I hope you are getting reinvigorated and re-inspired so you can put this into action and stick with it long term. You've obviously seen what happens when you eat the standard American diet and get the standard American diseases. You've seen what can happen when you make a change, and now here we are to re-inspire you. So consider yourself officially remotivated here, and thanks for being here. And now we have a special surprise for you. For a lot of people, juicers and blenders are great dust collectors, but we need to dust them off and put them to use. And probably the strongest and most popular consumer level blender available is the Vitamix. Our family uses one many times every day. Now, Vitamix is a company that is passionate about the food revolution, and to show their support, they're giving away a couple of free Vitamix blenders, one today and one later in the summit. They come with a 5-year warranty. And so we're going to be gifting a Vitamix blender to Michelle Crusay. Michelle said, "Thank you so much for that interview. I need motivation, and I've yet to be successful, and I'm so tired of being in pain every day and night. I have pain in my sleep. I can't relax. I wake up tense. I hope this will help." Well, Michelle, yes, we hope it will help. And we're going to gift you with a Vitamix to support you in your journey. So congratulations. We will contact you, and this is true for everybody who's winning an empowerment package as well. We'll contact you by email or Facebook. So please check your other folder in Facebook Messenger so you can hear from our team directly how they can get you a Vitamix blender. Congratulations. Jyoti Mann said, "Thank you so much, Ocean, your dad, and your experts for this summit. I can't believe how much I'm learning and finding. It's very interesting. I've been suffering from rheumatoid arthritis for 6 years now, and I find it hard to write fast when taking notes. I'm vulnerable due to the virus. Keep up the good work. Your dad is amazing. I love the questions he asks his experts. So informative, and God bless." Well, thank you, Jyoti, and bless you as well. And we want to make it easier for you to get the most out of this summit. We hope it can support you in addressing the arthritis you're dealing with. And we know that it can be hard to take fast notes, so we're going to gift you with an empowerment package so you can have the transcripts of the entire summit, including source links for life. You'll also have the MP3s, the recordings, and over $2,000 worth of bonuses. So congratulations. I know you will put it to good use. And congratulations also to all of the other folks who are jumping in and getting the empowerment package. We so appreciate your support of our mission and your investment in your health. Congratulations to Robert from Ontario, Canada, Phyllis from Washington, Barbara from North Carolina, Marlene from Washington, Carol from North Dakota, Elk from Austria, and everybody else who is stepping forward and jumping in and getting the empowerment package. We're so grateful for your partnership. And now I want to introduce our recipe of the day, which is warmly spiced quinoa chickpea stew. Now, I love this warmly spiced quinoa chickpea stew because it has so many immune-supporting elements. It's rich in plant-based protein and tons of fiber and a variety of spices that are so healthful and packed with phytonutrients, not to mention that they make it really flavorful. So each day of the summit, you will see a recipe of the day posted on our broadcast page. You can go ahead and open that up and make it if you like, so we can cook together as well as learning and growing together. Linda asked, "What do you think of kombucha?" And we've had a couple questions about kombucha here today. We actually wrote a whole article about kombucha. If you search on foodrevolution.org, for kombucha, you can find it, and that'll give you a lot more detail. The high level is that I'm actually kind of a fan of kombucha in general. It can get very sweet, though. Some of those varieties have a lot of sugar in them, and that's a problem because added sugars are not good, and kombucha has sugar in it. It's part of what the SCOBY eats, but it also eats the tea from green and black tea, and those are very beneficial. We know that green tea and black tea have fabulous antioxidants and phytonutrients that are great for health. And so kombucha does make use of that, and it also has quite a good amount of probiotics in it, which can be beneficial. The danger with kombucha is that it's highly acidic. So in addition to looking out for the sugar content, you've also got to look out for its impact on your dental health. It can be bad for teeth. So the best antidote to that is if you do drink kombucha, don't brush your teeth right afterwards. Instead, swish with some water, and then take a xylitol mint. Xylitol can be very alkalizing to the mouth, and it will help counteract the kombucha. So those are a few things we have heard people asking about today. Lots more questions and comments coming in. Keep it going. Keep the conversation flowing. And we are now approaching the end of day one of the Food Revolution Summit. And to express your opinions on what you've been hearing and to see what other people are saying, make sure to post and engage in the comments section and refresh the comments using the button you see there so you can see the latest ones. You can also join in the conversation on our Facebook page and follow us on Facebook. That's at facebook.com/Food Revolution Network. Again, that's facebook.com/Food Revolution Network. Come on back and join us tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific Time, 11 Eastern, 3 p.m. GMT for Brain, the new science of peak performance. We're going to have some powerful presentations from Dr. Daniel Amen, Drs. Dean and Aisha Sherzai, and Dr. David Perlmutter. Tomorrow's presentations will rock your world, so please come on back and join us. And in the meanwhile, post in the comments section, catch the replays at foodrevolution.org/replays. Check out the empowerment package so you can own it all for life. And you can also enjoy our recipe of the day, linked right on the broadcast page. We wish you a beautiful, thriving day, and I thank you so much for being here. We are just getting started. Make sure to join us tomorrow. And for now, this is Ocean Robbins signing off from day 1 in the Food Revolution Summit. At Food Revolution Network, our mission is healthy, ethical, and sustainable food for everyone who eats. We want kids to learn about healthy food in school. We want doctors to learn how nutrition impacts health in medical school. We want the routine use of antibiotics banned from factory farms. We want a world where everyone, regardless of their ethnic or economic background, has knowledge of and access to healthy food for their family. We want a world in which heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, obesity, and diabetes are rare, and in which vibrant health is the status quo. We're spreading the word and standing for change. And with every empowerment package purchased, we make a donation to Trees for the Future, enabling them to plant an organic fruit or nut tree in a low-income community. Join this movement and support this mission